call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Excellent. Roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Shu?
I'm here.
Vice Chair Gopal?
Yep. Yep.
Chair Tombe?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Stanek?
Here. And welcome.
Thank you.
Excellent. We're going to go ahead and move on to the approval of minutes for the April 4th, 2019 minutes. Looking for a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
I second it.
Excellent. Any discussion? Wonderful. We'll move to a vote. Excellent. And with that, the motion passes. Moving on to oral communications. Do we have any blue cards? No? Okay. Written communications. Where's this? Here we go. And now moving on to, we are actually going to move up business item number 5, which is to receive a pest management program presentation from Public Works Department, up as the first item to listen to from new business. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm Carl Valdez, the Public Works Service Center Superintendent here for the City of Cupertino, and we are invited tonight to speak on the city's Integrated Pest Management Program, or IPM. Tonight I have with me Sherry Donnelly, the Environmental Programs Manager, Ursula Sorova, the Environmental Programs Assistant, and Brian Gathers, the Public Work Ground Supervisor. We have a brief presentation that we hope to enlighten you with, and at this time I'll defer to my colleague Sherry Donnelly.
Good evening, commissioners and community. Thank you for having us here. Hopefully the presentation is up. And so, of course, we want to maintain safe and attractive recreational areas throughout the city, and we have to perform maintaining these areas amongst some very strict guidelines from the state and from our own municipal code and policies. The first biggest requirement for us is for water quality, and that is under the Federal Clean Water Act. We have to make sure that any water going into our streets is not polluted. In fact, we can only allow rainwater into our drains. So we have a permit that we have to report on every year to make sure that we're following all the requirements in about 12 chapters of the permit. And the permit is not something that is discretional or voluntary. We have to go in and get a permit in order to discharge our rainwater to our local creeks. Otherwise, it would flood our streets during stormy winters like we had this year. But we also have to manage all of that stormwater so that it's not polluted. And one of the aspects that we have to pay particular attention to is pest control. And pests can include weeds or insects or, critters, mice. And one of the things that's required in the permit is this integrated pest management, which just simply means we're required to use an ecosystem-based strategy where pesticides are used only after monitoring indicates that they are needed, and the treatments are selected and applied in a manner that minimizes risks to human health and to non-targeted organisms. So that could be, birds, fish, any other wildlife in the ecosystem. Cupertino adopted its integrated pest management policy in 2002, and there were specific chemicals that were not allowed, such as for the city to use, such as diazinon, which is what we use to control ants. It's an insecticide. And of course, as we get a new permit every 5 years, the requirements and restrictions grow. And we have meetings every year with our crews. So Brian here is the ground supervisor, and he basically maintains not only city parks, but some of the school properties, most of the elementary school properties. Okay. So. Brian, if you want, you can talk about this, or I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead, and then you can add some additional information. So, of course, we need to notice, especially not only near schools, but for our parks, that we do have a state requirement that if we're going to put out any kind of pesticide, we need to do it we need to put a notice out that looks similar to this 24 hours in advance. And then we have to leave it up for 72 hours after the application. And for example, I have heard that, it looks like the city is applying a lot of pesticide throughout the year, but Brian did a research project today and verified that we're averaging about 5 applications per year. Is that right? Per school. Okay, and those applications are never done when students are present. They're always done maybe a couple over the summer, one during winter break, spring break, that kind of thing. So it does have time for the pesticide to be used up. And it's not on turf. It's actually on landscaped areas. So I think the next slide. Yeah, something like this. It wouldn't be on the playing field. So we follow the best management practices. We have to look for the least toxic method and the most natural method of addressing pests. So in the case of weeds, we looked, and what the treatment that the city uses is one that it's applied less often than its alternative, and if we keep, as technology improves, we keep looking for something that is less toxic and that we can apply less often. So we have monthly and annual reporting, so every application is recorded and included not only in Brian's report to the state Department of Pesticide Regulation, but also to our annual water quality control board for the San Francisco Bay region. I think you all know that if anything that gets into our streets can be flushed with rain, it is flushed into our drain inlets and is channeled directly to our creeks. And then our creeks, like Stevens Creek, flow, downstream to our neighboring cities and finally into San Francisco Bay. So there are 76 cities that are under the same requirements for the San Francisco Bay region. So the crews that we have that apply these pesticides have advanced certificates in application for safety, and these are held by 17 of the crew members out of 19. And in addition, we have annual trainings where we get together with all of city staff and listen to what other cities have done, and we try to find the least toxic methods, whether it's mice or weeds. In addition, Brian and his staff go to many trainings per year, and he was just saying, last Tuesday he was at one. I don't know if it was Tuesday, but this week. And he's constantly learning about the safety controls, and as are his crews. The problem is that private property owners, for example, myself, if I have a big ant infestation or aphids, I might go down and buy something over the counter that we're not even allowed to use in the city. And furthermore, I'm thinking, I want these aphids gone, so I'm not going to use the amount that they say on the application. I'm going to just spray the heck out of my roses or something. And we did find one instant where in Cupertino, because our water is continuously being monitored by our regional program, who is also our consultant. But we did find some basic water toxicity, not high levels, but the source was bifenthrin, which is ant control. And we immediately were notified by our regional consultant, and we went to that area, and we talked to the homeowners association. We sent out flyers because a lot of people don't realize that if they don't use the pesticide according to the label, that they can overdo it and that it can run off and harm our water. So the next year we did not have that problem. So we do try to educate. That's one of the reasons I'm really glad you invited us here tonight. Not many people want to hear about this, but it's very helpful if we can engage all of us in this effort to keep a safe community. So these are some of the methods that we use. Brian was saying today, well, we try a lot, and a lot of these work very well, and it helps us minimize what we use as far as pesticides. So what you plant makes a difference. Even if you have two types of trees, the trees that you plant together can provide strength or at least prevent, like two certain trees may, because they're together, promote infestations of aphids. I know tulip trees are really problematic, and many cities aren't planting them anymore because they are prone to disease. So in addition, drought-tolerant landscaping is not only good because it basically takes the rainwater and it doesn't, you don't overwater it the way you do with lawn. And that runoff, even in the summer, is a problem. It's not just rainwater. It'll get into the street and the pollutants get to the creek. And then mulching, using ladybugs, drip irrigation rather than overspraying, and turf replacement. I don't know if you know that the Water District has had for a few years now basically rebates for if you want to change your lawn into a more eco-friendly landscaping where you don't have turf and you don't use as much water. So, okay. And then the further cautions, the application is timed to avoid blooming and impact on bees. We have, instead of spraying for trees, you can inject the tree trunk, and then it's more of a contained application. It's not just sprayed into the wind where it can get into the air we breathe. And of course, as I explained, treating areas when school is not in session. And the same thing with City Hall. If we have a treatment, it's not while we're all here working. Basically, that's the end of our presentation. Brian, you're really good at not talking. But if you have any questions, Brian can probably answer them, or I can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming in. We know that we've had a lot of questions about this, so we really appreciate you all taking the time to talk to us about what you've been doing. Does the commission have any clarifying questions before we move to public comment?
I do, if
Excellent.
I can. So you said you don't apply any pesticides to turf. So on the school fields, are you doing anything other than turf replacement?
Brian?
On some of the school sites, we do apply what's called turf lawn to kill some weeds in the turf. It's not often that we do that.
And what's turf lawn?
It's a weed killer.
Oh, okay.
So basically,
So it's a chemical.
It's safe on grasses, but it'll kill broadleaf weeds in turf.
It's not what we would know as Roundup.
Glyphosate. It's not glyphosate, no.
Yeah, Roundup's a glyphosate.
Okay. And so do you use that anywhere?
What's that? Roundup?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but not on fields.
but not on fields.
Okay, thank you.
And again, as Brian has explained to me, that the applications are more spot-oriented. It's not, they don't just go out and spray like in the old days when I was young, they had malathion helicopters.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question on, two questions. One is, you talked about residents using it, overdosing it somehow, and then it reaches. So what is the mechanism to communicate to all the residents in a periodical way? I know that's one incident, it looks like you got it. For example, people have open lawns in the front yard, and then obviously the water will drip through that and then it will go into the drain too, right? So what is the mechanism to make everyone aware of this?
Well, so we do have some of this information on our website. We do mention it whenever we're at an event, so like at our Earth Day event, or we also participate regionally in something called Our Water, Our World. And we actually go to the stores. I think Orchard Supply's closed now, but Home Depot, Orchard Supply, I'm trying to think of others. And we have shelf talkers that guide buyers, property owners, to least toxic pesticides or least toxic methods of pest control. So there's education if if people want it. We can, I'm just trying to think of other ways that we could get the word out, because wherever we put it, whether it's on the website or at an event, it doesn't get seen by everybody, and short of going out and maybe hanging door hangers or something.
I think my second question is almost you touched on the same topic. So how do we know, like Home Depot and all of the stores here, where we rush there to buy it in case if we see a small pest and say, okay, let's go and buy it, right? That's how we want to save it. I know you said that you're learning, but I think since if the city is really pushing that very hard, that this should not be allowed because it is going to contaminate entire, we can put warning signs in those stores, right? Because learning sometime we have those things, typically people in a rush, they might ignore it. But if it says, if you're buying this one, right, this is going against, it's okay, right? The store should honor that because it is under city limit. We should put the warning sign, right?
I mean, I think it's a great idea. Then you have to talk to the store owners, and you go through a legal process like anything, which I used to think it sounded simple, and I wanted to.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's simple, but I
yeah.
think that way we can enforce it. So if I see that as a warning as per Cupertino City doesn't allow kind of, then I may stay back off. Instead of something if it says learning, I just skip it and go. I just wanted to.
So do we have any other clarifying questions before we jump into discussion?
I do, actually. I don't know if they're clarifying. They're just sort of general questions. So a long time ago, I used to be part of a Dutch elm disease eradication project with the state of California. So I guess my question is, have you ever seen infestations, say on trees or plants in the city, like say scale insects? I know I've seen that occasionally, or not something like Dutch elm, I'm sure, because we don't have elm trees, but something like that. And if you have, how you treat that?
That would be another department. That would be our trees and right-of-way department, and I know they have come across some infestations of like aphids over in the Rancho area, and they have done applications. Like Sherry said, a lot of the applications they do try to do injection or a soil drench instead of spraying the tree.
That helps, thank you.
Excellent. Go ahead.
I have one last question. So you have mentioned, so which pesticide not allowed is already, the information is already on city website. Could you be more specific for people if they don't know how to get to the page?
I see. So this would be under environmental and sustainability section of the website. And then we have a link because, as I said, there are 76 agencies around San Francisco Bay working on this together. And we have a link to something, a site called Watershed Watch, mywatershedwatch.org. And you can find it on our website. As a matter of fact, I think through correspondence I can get this to the commission and it can be sent out to each of you with the link to go. But it's a very interesting website. It's not only educational, but it can really guide you on your choices, both for landscaping and for pest control. Thank you.
Wonderful. Do we have any blue cards? Any comments from folks here? No? Any blue cards? Awesome. Okay, we will go ahead and switch into a little bit of a discussion. So previously, groups have come to us with some concerns about the spraying and things that are happening. So I was wondering if you could address some of those concerns about spraying at school sites, I know that the concern hasn't actually been around its impact to the kids, because that doesn't happen at the times that the kids are there, but also to, plants and insects and other things that they're either trying to grow or animals that are coming in, and the kind of impact that that does have.
So again, the school sites, I may have mentioned this, but schools are under a completely different jurisdiction, right? They are run by the state. But we have partnerships with the schools, and one of the agreements we have is to maintain the school sites. So if a school were to decide that they didn't want to use something, then the school could actually direct the city. We can't force the school to do something. As far as applications, it's always when people aren't there that we look for the kind of treatment that won't be dispersed through air or water or, playing on turf. I think, as Brian says, if you don't like one pesticide, you really need to say, well, he responds to schools. He said he just had a school this week say, you need to get out here and get the weeds out of our playing field, because this is, how we use it. And if we're not to use one pesticide, then we really need to find another one that can do the same thing. And what we've done is look for the one that needs, requires the fewest applications and has the fewest, has the least impact on any humans or of the wild. Okay. I may not have answered your question totally, but if I didn't, you can.
You answered my specific question.
Okay.
I mean, we can defer to. Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to wait for another 30 seconds. We, just as a gentle reminder to folks in the audience, typically there's only one opportunity for folks to speak on an agenda item. But given the number of community members that are here today, I'm going to make an exception. So if we can have Hans come on up, and after that it will be Chris. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Hans Stonesfeld. I've been with the 4-H group, and we're here for a different reason, but it looks like, but I didn't know they were going to be talking tonight about pesticides and insect control, weed control. And I'd like to tell you some of the things we do, because we work with the University of Davis, California. They have their integrated pest management program. So one of the things we've done is we use 20% vinegar in a spray bottle with just a little bit of dishwasher soap. And with that, it took us about 3 years. We had an infestation of a nasty weed called puncture vine. I don't know what the technical, the scientific name is, but basically we were losing wheelbarrow wheels had to be fixed every month. They were going flat. And within a matter of about 3 years, we eliminated them. We also have had, of course, a problem with rats because we have animal feed there. The animals spill it. There is a new product that has just come on the market in the last couple of years. It was developed at the University of Iowa. And basically, it makes, we talk about reduce, reuse. It makes use of what has been a waste product for the corn industry. When they extract the corn syrup, okay, they have left over the residue. And one of the researchers say, well, they're throwing it away. Maybe we could use it as a mulch in the beds. One weekend, they left a bunch of it in a shed, and they forgot to close it up. The guy came in on the Monday morning, and what did he find? A bunch of dead rats. Wow. Now, years later, they've done a whole bunch of research, and what they have found out is that the corn, they call it corn gluten, but it's just the waste, okay? It turns off the thirst mechanism, but only for rodents, only for rats and mice. It's safe for, even for rabbits, it's safe for cats, dogs, kids, you name it. If they happen to eat it, it's roughage, okay? Meanwhile, somebody else discovered that if you do apply it out in the vegetable garden, it's a natural pre-emergent pesticide, or what do they call it? Anyway, takes care of, kills weeds. Okay, I started using it. I first heard about 3 years ago. I started using. I have a natural planting in my front yard. I started using it, and it's cut way back on. All I've got left now is some grass, and it turns out Preen, which used to sell one of their toxic chemicals, nasty, right? They now sell it under the name of Preen Natural. It's 100% corn gluten. You can apply it on lawns. It also kills a lot of the wild grasses.
Excellent. And we've actually reached time. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, next we have Chris. Come on up.
Excuse me. First off, Kevin, thanks for the email inviting me to come. I spoke earlier with students from Collins School. Thanks for the flexibility of having me come up a little bit late. Didn't submit the blue card in time. First off, I want to say, Brian and Sherry, your efforts to responsibly apply chemicals are really appreciated, and your point about the difference between how private citizens apply chemicals and how schools apply them is definitely well taken. It shows the responsibility that we have to apply these chemicals responsibly. Hans's question about alternatives is really germane, and I believe that the city should consider a trial of some kind to examine, other alternatives to application of these chemicals. If they need to be regulated under such strict, to the gram controls, should we consider alternatives, hand pulling, mulching, etc. I would point us towards the city of Menlo Park, which had the 3-year, I don't know the length of the program, they had their pilot program. They piloted it at a couple of parks. I'm sure you're in contact with these cities. I know Santa Rosa has done the same. I feel like the city has a responsibility to take the moral leadership on this issue, especially in light of, I don't know if you've been familiar with the insect population declines. I mean, glyphosates are a big deal. And if we can take the responsibility of the city to provide leadership to private citizens also know these should not be used. These pilot programs, this includes mulching, hand pulling. Alternatives are out there besides application that I feel like we have not examined. How scalable are they? How much more would they cost? We have not done the diligence it takes to really figure out what our alternatives are in the city. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that way it doesn't ring midway. Any thoughts from commissioners? Excellent. I'd actually, go ahead.
So I think in the community, we have some concerns that may or may not be justified. And in fact, just in the last couple of days, I've seen this kind of explode on Nextdoor. And in fact, someone has put up a petition on change.org. That's a student at our school's parents, so I know that. Okay, so So there's a petition right now that they're concerned that Roundup is being used at the schools. And so, this may be an information gap. And I think we have a great opportunity here to go to these people specifically and tell them what we're doing, correct any misconceptions that they have. And so I'd like to see what we can do. I mean, maybe we need to address this petition specifically and the people who have put it up there. And if we could get, invite them to a meeting and say, we'd love to talk to you about what we're doing, if you weren't aware that we had this meeting tonight, because I'm sure they weren't. I mean, I've just watched this, I think somewhere about this morning when I saw it, it had about 82 signatures. It now has 153 signatures on this. And I mean, when I was sitting at dinner, I was just watching the count go up and up and up. So people are very concerned about it, especially when someone puts a statement out that says that Cupertino continues to cover the fields with Monsanto's Roundup. And so they're concerned. And especially when someone makes a statement like that, then you get more people concerned. So I think we need to go out and be very proactive. So I'd like to propose that we do something, especially to address this, and get out there in front of them and just not just say, well, it's on our website. Definitely do a reach out to these people in particular so that we can correct that.
Any
Do you
thoughts?
want me
Go
to
ahead.
respond?
Yes, that would be great.
So my first thought, it's a great idea, and I can go to our public information officer and just, it can be done right. So, I mean, I will inquire about that. That would be my follow-up item. And also, I thank you very much for the alternatives that you mentioned, because one of the things that we are required to do, and we do it readily, is every year, anybody who does any pesticide application for this city meets annually, and we discuss what everybody else is doing and any methods that we can change, that, anything that we can try, that we can pilot. We may not be able to do it citywide, but like you said, try it in a smaller area. That really interests me, and I can see Brian nodding too. So these are the things we want to do, and some of the, the things that do come out of meeting like this. So I just want to thank you very much.
Excellent. And when is that annual meeting?
So the annual meeting is, we haven't set it up. It's always in end of May or June. We have to do it before July 1st.
That would be a good date to do it before. So we would love to just, when that date is selected, we love to just know when that's coming down the pipeline.
That sounds great.
Awesome. And I know that there are community members who would also be interested in either contributing ideas or learning from what comes out of that meeting as well.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could speak to a little bit more about what was mentioned in one of the public comments around the pilots that are being done in Menlo Park, because I saw you nodding a little bit about that.
What I was nodding to is that we work very closely, especially in the city of Santa Clara. We're talking all the time with the other cities. I'm in meetings with them frequently. And then Menlo Park is San Mateo County. But regionally, Menlo Park is one of the 76 agencies around the San Francisco Bay. And we work together, and instead of hiding what we've succeeded with, we like to share and steal, and it's a compliment, So I can certainly reach out to Menlo Park and find out, what they've done. I would love to do that. And I can see Ursula's already taking notes. So,
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other comments, thoughts, feedback points? Excellent. So it looks like we have a couple of action items coming out of this, both incorporating some of the recommendations from community members, as well as reaching out to cities like Menlo Park and looking at what we can do to make sure we're communicating the information properly, and also that the schools are the ones who do the direction in terms of what happens with spraying on the campus. Now, my only concern here is that sometimes it's a little bit of a back and forth, and then the person to actually say, no, we need to change this, keeps handing it off. So if it is the schools that are responsible for that.
Well, they have the final say because it is their property. We don't, as a city, have jurisdiction over the schools. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So the reason I ask is just for us as well, so we can actually follow up with the appropriate members at the school. Who would that be? Do you know who the proper person is within the structure of the school that can?
Well, is it that we have a problem with the schools, or we just have some misinformation out there that we need to clarify? That's kind of what I was seeing here.
As far as covering the fields with a pesticide, that's not happening. And that would be your communication with the public. And then if there are concerns, I just know that there's an agreement. I'm not part of, I mean, with the school, I don't know exactly, I don't know who they work with at the school. I would assume it's a district person, but I don't know.
Well, I think getting back to your point, I think setting up a meeting with the community would be very good to kind of get what they're saying, and they know what we're doing, because I think there is a lot of misinformation out there right now going around. So that I think would curb a lot of that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that would really help. So if you could let us know too, if and when you're going to have a meeting, you know, one of us could maybe attend as well.
Would that be Pat King? Would that be Jeff Bowman? Who would that be in CUSD that would need to be involved in that? Is Jeff Bowman?
So sorry,
Pat King does all the maintenance and operations. And then the board would, you know, is that a board decision? So there's a lot of layers here, either within CUSD or at the board level.
We do. I would love, I was hoping to ask you to come up and ask that question just so everybody else who's listening can be able to hear. So I'd like to ask a directed question to the member of the community that is familiar with the school side layering process. If you want to come up and ask that just so it's on record and not.
Okay, great. Sorry for, I've got a loud voice. This is from yard duty, years and years of it. Yeah, so I'm a teacher in CUSD as well as a parent in the community. We also, you weren't here when I presented I don't know if it was the last meeting, but we've been working on our school for years for installing habitat-friendly, drought-tolerant gardens at our school.
Perfect.
So we've worked closely with grounds over the years. So currently the head of grounds is Pat King, and then he is, you know, I don't know if he's head of operations, but he's definitely head of grounds. But it seems to me the decision there would probably need to be a board-wide decision if it's going to be. I doubt that would be a site-by-site decision. Cupertino is not that.
Know.
Cupertino is not that decentralized.
It looks like Christine has an answer for us.
Yes, thank you. Christine Hannell, Assistant Director of Recreation. I just wanted to mention that the city does have a joint use agreement with the school district.
Yeah, our school is one of those schools.
So actually, we just met with them, so we do have contacts. And we do have meetings at least once a year, if not more. We're scheduled to meet with them again, actually, probably in the next month or so. So we do have contacts. And in those meetings, that includes public works staff. Brian's often there. I'm there. There's city staff and then district staff. So the names that you mentioned are all folks that take part in those meetings.
Nice
so
people, too.
We can add this to our agenda for the next meeting as well. And we definitely have a means of reaching out to them.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the parent who started the change.org. I wasn't behind it in any way, but I taught his son last year. Not every day, but he was in my classroom. So I'm familiar with that family too. So, I mean, I could potentially be a helper in kind of getting
the connections
going and foster some trust. I mean, you guys are pros. You're not out there trying to drench things. I mean, yeah, you've gone through all the training, but still, there's a lot of options out there, and there's also, as you pointed out, we don't want there to be public alarm. We want people to be informed. But at the same time, there are options out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Wonderful. Do we have any other additional comments from the commissioners? Wonderful. So it looks like we have a bunch of action items on the horizon for us, and we'll definitely be following up on this as well. Thank you very, very much for coming, and it's good for us to have this opportunity to also engage with the community so that, you know, we don't there's no misinformation, and if there are things that we can change, then we can work on changing them. So thank you very, very much, all four of you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Now we shall continue with the agenda as originally planned. Agenda item number 2 under old business is the discussion and recommendation to City Council on the revision of the community funding policy. Welcome back. For those of you who are in the audience or listening, the City of Cupertino offers several series of grants to different community organizations, both within Cupertino as well as impacting different residents of Cupertino. Every year, these organizations apply into the city, and then they're allocated a certain amount of funds afterwards. We just completed this process with a new system that was in place, and we have some feedback and have had some feedback around that process. So that's the general outline for the rest of this conversation. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. So, as you had already mentioned, last meeting we had brought forward to you all of the applications for community grant funding request. And at that meeting, you all had made a funding recommendation to council, which will be brought forward to the budget study session, which is going to be on Monday, May 13th. So in addition, as part of that budget study session, staff is also proposing revisions to the community funding policy. And that's what we are bringing forward to you tonight. So given that there have been several updates to the community funding application, staff feels that it's important that we update the policy. So we'll go ahead and give you a little background about that. Now, the goal of the policy, basically it's to provide a framework for the city's community funding grant program and guides the administration of the program and decision-making process. And it also provides guidance on key aspects such as the eligibility requirements, evaluation criteria, some restrictions and general guidelines, as well as the procedure. So the first version was adopted in fiscal year 2013. The policy was had some input from the Parks and Recreation Commission at that time. And the revised and current policy is was adopted in fiscal year 2016 as part of the adopted budget. So what we're recommending here tonight is to take a look at the recommended, the proposed revisions to the policy. And the hope is that we can bring this forward and have it adopted as part of the entire budget, which will be reviewed on May 13th and then adopted on June 18th. So at the last meeting that we had here on April 4th, the Parks and Recreation Commission had some recommendations after going through this initial pilot process of having the recommendations, having a recommendation of funding that's going to council. Highlighted here are 3 different recommendations, and one was talked about was to have a designated funding cap. Currently, as you know, there is no total funding cap that the city has, so if that's something that you would like to recommend, like a certain dollar amount, we can do so and insert that into the policy at this time. Also, a recommendation from the commission was to separate previous grant recipients from new applicants, or possibly give a higher prioritization for new applicants. And you know, that was a result of you know, newer applicants not being able to get funded, and the previous applicants had higher priority. So somehow we can try to fix that as well. And the other recommendation was the tiered funding structure, and this came about from having a pool that was one pool where you're comparing an organization who is requesting $500 to another organization that's requesting, say, $20,000. And so a tiered funding structure is something that we're proposing in this new updated policy. One recommendation that staff is suggesting is to have a funding cap per applicant. So this is a recommendation of a $20,000 funding cap per applicant. I believe, so this is the largest amount of funding that has been requested at least in the last year. We can take a look at that as we get through the different recommendations that I'll be going over. Again, we haven't put in a total funding cap at this time. This is just a recommendation for funding cap per applicant. And another change that we wanted to at least add into the policy is just a note here of that staff, there's a right to reject any and all applications, and that is if, say, there's like a potential conflict of interest for any reason, staff would have the right to reject any of those applications. And another, moving on to the next section is a section of evaluation criteria within the policy. A suggestion here is to have, in addition to the criteria already listed, is to consider the additional financial or in-kind support from the city, for example, fee waivers for a program, project, or event. This is already a question that's within the application, so staff is proposing that this be considered one of the criteria that you'd use to assign points to. And again, this is just a suggestion, so we can revisit this at the end of the presentation. And all of the criteria that's listed in the new policy is consistent with what's listed in your the grant application. So within the evaluation criteria section of the proposed policy, we're also looking at a sample tiered structure here. It would look similar to this. So applications will be evaluated using a tiered structure based on the dollar amount requested for the award as follows. And so here there's 5 different tiers. We could adjust this as you wish. Again, this is just a sample of if we wanted to create a tiered system, and how we would rank all that is not determined at this time. And a new section also in the policy is just a general section of restrictions and guidelines. So these are just general guidelines to consider. There's things like reminding you that funds can only be used for its original intended purpose that's stated in your application. We're also requesting that your full financial statements be submitted. We're also recommending that the event should be free of charge unless you get approval by the Parks and Recreation Commission. It's also, we're requesting that grant requests that if say any grant requests are made directly to any members of the city council, whether as an individual or as a group, that the council members must direct you to go through the grant application process like everybody else. And another reminder would be to have if you're going to use the city logo in any way, that the organization must get approval from our public information officer. And the last section of the policy would be to include a general procedure here. So this, again, is just outlining the basic steps involved in the funding, the community grant funding program. Applications are due March 1st. And the next step is that the Administrative Services Department reviews these applications. The Parks and Recreation Commission evaluates and provides funding recommendations to council. And then council will make the final decision at our budget adoption meeting. And then the new requirement here, actually it is in the current policy, is to submit some type of written report that'll show, that'll tell us what you spent your funds on. And at this time, there is no system that formalizes this, so staff is actually not tracking this, and we're hoping to make this a requirement. We're saying here in this proposed policy that it should be submitted within 45 days of the event or program. However, we'd like to see if we can change that to maybe 45 days within the calendar year so that we can track it just one time in the year versus multiple times throughout the year for different programs. So those are the different, those are the changes that we are proposing, and we will open that up for discussion after my presentation, which is now at an end here. Just as a reminder, the study session is coming up. It's in about a week and a half, and that's on Monday, May 13th, and then the budget adoption will happen in a month later, on June 18th. So ready for any questions and discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know that we gave a lot of feedback after the initial round, so you did a fantastic job of incorporating this into the policy, and I'm sure that we will have questions from the commission as well as comments. But before, I wanted to remind folks who are here, if you have any thoughts on how the commission should spend the dollars that we have to the community, even if it's, prioritize these kinds of programs or anything like that, do fill out a blue card at the front on the right-hand side. We would love to hear from you. While that's happening, we'd love to hear from the commissioners on clarifying questions. So again, this is not time for comment. This is just for asking clarifying questions. I have a feeling our discussion will be robust. Go ahead.
Thank you. You mentioned that I think in one of those, I think community funding policy proposed revisions and the restriction on guidelines, and you specifically called out for grant requests made directly to the city council members must go through grant application process. Why just council members alone? They are supposed to go to. Why it is specific to council members when they come to us? It is applicable to all, right?
Oh, sure. This is just saying in an example that a member of the public might just not be aware of the grant program process, and they go directly to a council member to say, we are interested in grant funding, and we want to make sure that they just go through the formalized process of, like everybody else will. And so not to give anybody, we don't want the, council members to promise any type of awards or, funding to your organization, because we require that you submit a grant application and go through the formal process and reviewed by the Parks and Recreation.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
I would probably say it's because the council is elected, and it's an elected position by the community, and so they're beholden to the community and to the people, whereas they appoint us, and So I think that might be the distinction too. It gets more into the political realm.
Seeing as we don't have any blue cards, we can go into comment as well as questions.
That's fine.
Oh, no.
Just one follow-up question. I don't understand, maybe that's me, additional financial or in-kind support from the city, example fee waiver for program, project, and event. So can you clarify what that is? I listened to it, but I couldn't understand how that is.
Sure. So
what that means. Yeah.
Sure. So sometimes organizations can receive like a fee waiver to rent a room at, say, Quinlan Community Center or whatnot. So, so what they're referring to as if they are already receiving like a free room rental, like as a fee waiver for that room rental, we want to know and take that into consideration. So as opposed to, another group, they don't receive any type of fee waiver or something already provided by the city.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Unfortunately, I had to recuse myself from this whole discussion, so I probably missed out on some things. So just quickly, when you request full financial statements from an organization, would that be the financial statements based on the event, or would it be, every financial statement, like their, profit and loss statements, or I guess that's just a clarifying question. Or should it?
I want to say they're for the organization, but maybe, Kevin, do you have? We have one example.
Okay, good.
So while we're looking that up, did you have additional
Yes,
questions?
I do. So from your recollection, all of the organizations that applied this last time, were all of them 501c3s, or were there some exceptions to that?
It was a requirement, so they all are 501c3s.
Okay. Then my last question, and I guess is probably more for the commissioners or staff, how a tiered structure might look. So would you take like 2 people under 500, or, yeah, I guess that's just sort of a question maybe the commissioners can discuss.
We'll
or-
be determining
Yeah,
that
okay.
this evening as well.
Okay.
To answer your other question, I was just looking at some of the applications that were submitted this year. They submitted their financial statements for the entire organization.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
not just the event only.
Okay, great, thank you.
And that's one thing that we can consider as well, because on the application, it actually says that to submit it if they have it. And on the policy, it's written as it's required. So we can make sure that that's consistent, whether we want it to be required or if applicable. Or let's see, I think it says, indicate any additional funding received last year from other sources and provide your financial statement if available.
And I have 2 questions. So one is on the 3rd page. It mentioned we can separate previous grant application, or maybe give higher score for the new applicants. So that means there will be further discussion to finalize this procedure, or in meeting, or
Yes, there'll be further discussion to finalize that. We can set a date for maybe in the fall and have some bigger study session on formalizing the criteria and the point system.
Okay. And my second question is about the funding cap for application package. And now you mentioned 20K. I'm just wondering if there's any better way to define the funding cap. I remember, so the previous year, the total funding was less than 60K, 60,000. So 20 maybe looks a little bit higher. Maybe we can get some.
That would just be for one per organization.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe 20% of the total funding is as a cap for one single organization. Maybe that. I just wondering if we just put 20K. Maybe in future.
Dollar amount.
Yeah, maybe it will change. So
Yeah, that's a good
just some idea about this.
Yeah, we just initially put $20,000 in looking at the funding request from last year, and that was the highest amount. So we decided to start with the 20,000, and we can go from there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if council gives us a budget, then at least the organizations can know what that maximum would be. If there's no budget, then they won't know what a percentage of nothing is.
Yeah, I just maybe some information from previous year. And
Yeah, I think it would actually be really helpful if the city council were able to somehow earmark a certain amount for us so that we knew what we were working with, and the community members also knew what we were working with when they came in for it, because it's a bit ambiguous to just say like yes to all these people if the city council is going to be like, oh no, we're only going to fund up to 50,000 this year because of budget constraints, and then we have said yes to community members up to a certain point, and then if the city council says no, then it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily the best for our community members. So it'd be better to have as much information as possible from the city council from the get-go.
And I would agree, and also it's hard to base it on previous years, because I think previous years we've only had like maybe max 3 or 4 community organizations coming to council, and then this year, I don't know, we have 20 plus, so probably really need to look at this year and then base it on this year.
Right.
But I agree, we need to have an idea of how much money is available.
So we're ready for
Oh.
some comments.
Oh, yeah,
actually.
we can jump into comments, yeah.
Yeah. So the one evaluation criteria of the additional financial or in-kind support from the city, I think that as a criteria that you would be assigning points to, that seems like it would give that too much importance, actually. I would think if you could dollarize what it is that you're giving to them, then you can see what is the actual value that, there's the in-kind, there's the grant that they're asking for, and then you could have a comment of what are the other dollars in kind or the fee waivers that they're receiving. So you could just see the number, and then it would fall into wherever it goes in the tiered structure. Because I just think having it as a criteria, it just wasn't clear that it works with the other criteria. And then the other thing, I thought in looking at the tiers that there were just too many. It was just too fine a distinction, and maybe 2 or 3 at most that we should have. And it can be any under $1,000 maybe is one, and then 1,000 to
5,000.
5,000 or something like that, and then above
Agree.
5,000, just to simplify it. Because otherwise, are we going to be picking, like Helene asked, a couple from every category or what? Or have a dollar amount that we can do per category? But I think 3 categories should be more than enough. I mean, this was just too fine.
Agree. I think I got the same comment on it. Like it looks like too much. So definitely, I would like to see that one. The other 2 comments. One is that I know we talked about 20% or percentage-wise too, but that could lead into people inflating the actual one, because if I have to get a 20% of 10,000 is 2,000, I can come back with a 20,000 or 30,000, then still I may get a 20% of it. So I think it may lead to, I'm not saying that they'll do, but it may lead to that kind of a calculation problem. So I think my recommendation or my comment would be, I think we should seal it into the amount. Doesn't matter how it is, and maybe 20,000 is high in the sense, as Commissioner said, if you get only 60,000, assuming that only we give it to, then looks like we may give it only 3 people, right? So that 20,000 seems to be really high. If you could seal it to 10,000, again, these are all comments, recommendations. I think I know staff will discuss further, but I would say like 10,000 seal it. If right now we got 75K, I believe, right, this time allocated by the council for this year. I don't know how much we allocated, 75 or
you
whatever.
came up to 89,000.
Oh, 89, okay. Then they should have allocated 89, sorry. I reset it, okay, 90K.
The council hasn't bought into
They
that
haven't gone
yet.
through the budgeting process yet. I think that was just thrown out, maybe.
Yeah, so at least 9 people, assuming that even if you go to 100K, then we get 10 people at least max. Kind of, if it is 20 means it's going down, so that's one comment I have. The other one is, what is it proceed generated, maybe funded activity may only be used for the conducted activity? And how are we going to verify it? Who is going to spend time on it? There is a restriction, it says. If it is just a guideline, it's okay, but it says a restriction. I'm not sure whether it falls into restriction or guideline.
Oh, sure. I believe that.
The first one, proceeds generated from the funded activity may only be used. Who is going to verify it?
Well, from what the applicant states on their grant application, we are hoping that they'll be using those funds for what they're telling us. It's an honor system, and so that's why we're requiring now the report at the end of the year to tell us how your event went and making sure that you use the funds for what you said you were going to use it for. Because if you didn't, then that'll disqualify you from the next time you ask for funding if you do decide to apply the next year. So there's no way that we can monitor. We don't go out and go to your event and ask.
The reason I don't want us to get into that kind of, that's what I said, it's a trust honor system. We trust them to do it. Because when, as you said, if city is trying to see, okay, if they're going to be disqualified, then you need to have enough evidence that they have used that amount for something else. And that means we are getting into a lot of those fund management system, which I don't think that city or city staff, any of us will have a time to do it. In my personal opinion, that should not be even called out. You can just as a recommendation, hey, I hope they use it. That's as part of the application itself. Then we don't have to call that out as separate. That's my comment. So I'll leave the others to discuss while I come back on something else.
Any other additional comments? All right, I got a 10.
I thought you got only one. No.
I wish. So in addition to the tiered system, I want to see just not necessarily points, but just a note, a question where is it a recurring fund for a recurring program, or is it a one-time use fund? So I believe it was Sacred Heart that had asked for a canopy for the rain issues that they were having. That's a one-time expenditure, and I was personally comfortable being like, hey, this year you are going to get priority because that's a one-time fund spend and we're not going to need to do that again. I would like to know kind of where it falls between recurring and a one-time. Also, the one org, I want to see one organization put in a comprehensive application if they're going to ask for funding for several projects. What I noticed with the Chinese American organization that had like 3 different things that it was.
SBC United. They put 3.
They put 3. I actually, when I looked at that, I noticed that all of us had actually ranked one of their programs up at the top. If you looked at each of our individual ones, one of their programs made it to the top of all of ours, but because we all ranked different ones high, like a different one higher, none of them made it. And so it would be better if they came in only as one, like one organization can come out with one grant request. Unless it's like a specific, like I think if it's like a festival, for example, that has many players involved, that's a little bit different. But if it's one organization that's just doing several different events, it should be one application that's comprehensive instead. I actually thought that 20K was fine in terms of a funding cap. Because this was not in agreement with the rest of the commission, but I just felt like, we can, because I've done budgeting, in my previous role when I was managing a $1.25 million budget allocation process, we went through each of almost like 100 different allocations that we had slotted and broke down pricing as relevant. We actually ask them for exactly what it is that they're spending that money on, not just here's a general, we need, $250 for paper. Well, or like for this program, I want to know what you're spending it on, because candidly, I have an interest in supplying, paper specifically. I don't necessarily have an interest in supplying other things that might not be core to whatever that program is. So I would want to see more specificity in terms of the budget breakdown that they're asking for instead of a generic end number. The next is partnerships. So I know that there was a point there was a bullet point that talked about demonstrated effort to secure funding from other sources. I actually also want to add a section that would talk about partnerships. What I noticed was that we had programs like, a Jewish American movie night. I think that's fantastic. I think that's something we could very easily tie into neighborhood events. There's no reason that we need to give grant money to something that could be completely in that. There were dance shows and dance performances that were asking for funding. We could very easily tie that into neighborhood events, use funding that the city council is already planning on allocating for purposes like this, and partner with either us or other organizations that are doing similar things, so that there's a little bit more cross-functional cross-community engagement, so people aren't just staying within themselves, but actually utilizing resources to the max. I just wanted to make sure that when we said the historical, or nobody could go directly to the city council to request funds, it didn't mean something like Historical Society, because we had actually told them that they need to go talk to them. So just wanted to make sure that was correct. Okay, great. And then the other point of higher prioritization for new applicants, that wasn't my understanding from our conversation. We actually did want to make sure that people who did depend on us for recurring funding understood where they sat. I think we were just saying that we want to make sure there's at least a small percentage of the overall funds that are, 20% are going to go to newer organizations, but not necessarily prioritize said newer organizations over another organization. And then the final component is, I do want to have, we have the report at the end. I think in addition to asking them to find partners to do this with within the city and externally, finding people who can supplement financially. I want to see some kind of marketing efforts for what they're doing to the broader community, again, outside of the immediate nature of what they're doing. And the reason, the primary rationale around outreach and marketing is that we have so many community events and so many community programs that Cupertino, gives to our citizens, that it would be great to ensure that anything that we give funding to is also communicated out to everybody else. Not saying, oh, the city of Cupertino gave us this money, but more just that this is a program that's available and that they should, try and at least get new members, or they should try and get new engagement in whatever events. So it's not just the same people from that organization. They actually get to spread their word, and the efficacy of those programs is increased with marketing as well, even if that is a line item. And I actually disagree in terms of the first item on the guidelines. I think it's perfectly fine to say, use it for what you applied for. I think it's fine to have that as a bullet. There's almost no international standard for NGO or nonprofit compliance in terms of donations, and that's why there's, like VeriSign and all those kinds of companies do a lot of management around that, but it's one of the biggest challenges with nonprofits, so I don't anticipate that that's something we can really, we can't force it, but it is, I think, something that we should at least list. And then who knows, there might be a whistleblower inside an organization saying like,
who might use this one?
Who might use this as a bullet point.
Okay,
We might be able to include that in their wrap-up at the end, to
like
say,
receipts.
please let us know. I wouldn't do receipts. Don't go there. You don't want to be auditing them in question. But,
Exactly.
Give us a rough estimate of your budget, of your actual expenses, and, just to get a sense of, did they spend a whole lot more? Did we just fund a third of it, or did we fund 100% of it? Something like that. So, have that be something that we recommend that they include, or we require they include in their presentation afterwards, of how did the event go, how much money did you actually spend on it.
Yeah, I guess when I think of grants, the way a grant works, it's not like you're just donating money to a nonprofit and it just goes into their operational budget. What the organization is doing when they're applying for a grant is saying we're doing a specific project or having a specific event, and there should, I agree, have a specific budget that goes along with that. And then the grantee comes along later and does have the evaluation and the measurement of the grant, whether it's a project or whatever. So I agree that bullet should stay in there, and the grant should be for that specific thing that they applied for. It's I think kind of the nature of a grant.
Yeah, I think my comment is not necessarily that we should have it or not, but I think as long as city, or we're not going into micro level to find out, ask for it, and that means you are really questioning them too much. And assuming that if we are given $1,000 and the staff time and the money we spent on it, our hours, on going and finding out whether they really spent it or not, is going to be really, really much more than what we donated to them. So that's a comment on it. So I do have a few comments, but I think I'll let Commissioner go, and then
I just have a question for the last page of the slide. So you mentioned the next steps in funding process. I just checked the calendar. So the budget adoption will happen in your council meeting. That's on a Tuesday, is that right?
Yes.
But the study session, that's on Monday. So is it a closed session or open to?
No, it's a special meeting. So it's a budget study session.
Oh,
so they'll be reviewing the budget and discussing everything at that time. It's a public meeting.
Oh, I just wonder if that's open to community. Yeah, the
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we do. If you are able to attend, we'd love to have you there.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Did you have additional?
Oh yeah. One question is that you said that for repeated. I know I agree with the chair. Originally, we talked about let's put a cap of the total allocation to the repeated applicants, so that the maximum can be used to the new applicants. That's a cap. What cap, 2080 or 2575, I don't know, but I think with staff and the city will decide, I assume. However, we need to also to have an evaluation criteria on What do you mean by repeat? How many times they can come? They can come once or they can come twice. How do we call them as a repeated? It's only once they applied it, that means second time they're not eligible, which bucket they go. I think it'll be good to clarify it for anybody who comes in there. Otherwise, first time they applied, second year can they come, or you're going to call them repeated, or you allow them twice and then call them a third time as repeated, and when they can come back. So those are things will be clear for organizations to come and ask for a constant support repeatedly. At least they know that accordingly they can plan. Hey, I asked twice, I cannot go for next 2 years. I can come only after the 4th year. So those kind of guidelines would be good for any applicants. And if we categorize them as you are a repeat applicant, then we need to clarify that.
So are you I would think that's a repeat recipient, not a repeat applicant. Because an applicant, if they didn't get it, then they're just like anybody else.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So
thanks for correction.
Recipient.
Yeah, repeat recipient. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
But also, I think that's part of the commission when they debate. I guess I wouldn't want to put too much restriction on that. That's just my personal opinion, because when the commission will actually debate, when they look at the different applicants, they'll say, oh, that applicant has received it. That should be part of what you discuss, or what the commission discusses when those organizations come to be ranked, or however you did it. But to make that a criteria so that they can't apply that particular year?
Maybe I think I didn't communicate properly. So when we allocate a cap, assuming that 100K, and if I say 25K is going for the repeated recipients, and 75K is going for the new, assuming that if we put the cap, now which bucket those people will go, I don't think that we should debate. I think they should put it in that, okay, this person already received last year, so they should go into the 25K bucket. Otherwise, we will be sitting together and we'll be scratching our head on which bucket they will go, because that's the cap I was trying to
So I think I understand what you're trying to say. So essentially, every person who comes in as an applicant, we can right off the bat bucket them into either they're a new applicant or an old applicant. I think it's I just want to be very clear. When I was saying like 25, 75, I meant 25 to new organizations, 75 to existing, because I was like, oh, that's gonna be a lump sum. So just making sure that that's clear.
The cap I will leave it to the city and staff. They will decide what the appropriate.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I think if a person has received a grant one time and they apply again, they are a repeat. If they have not received a grant, then they are a new.
Again, a new. Agree.
I think those are the two distinctions.
Yep. I think that'll make clear. So
that, just so it's clear to when people are asking. So this is more of a general question to the commission. Getting 501c3 status can be difficult, and not everybody is familiar with having a fiscal sponsor for 501c3s, which is okay. Well, we're not going to get into that, but it is very difficult and sometimes can be a little costly for new organizations to have 501c3 status. So while I recognize that it is a really good metric for us to understand the organization's efficacy, I don't necessarily know if we want that to be a requirement. I think what we can say is preference will be given to 501c3, but it is possible that, there's some community member that comes up with this really great program that they want to implement, and they want, $5,000 one year to put it, or $1,000 to put it into effect, and we're forcing them to turn into a 501c3 for this. So I guess it's a two-part. One is, have we had that happen in the past of, community members that have had projects, but because they didn't fulfill this, they were unqualified for it? And then second question is, commissioners, what do you think?
Yeah, I think.
I want to hear her first.
I'm actually not aware of that in the past or anything. I'm not sure if Christine has come across.
So something somewhat similar is we do have co-sponsored clubs in the city. And yes, I have had people through the years, it has been a while, but through the years, people will put together their own club. So let's say it's their own neighborhood ping pong club. And they are reaching out and they want the benefit of having space that is either at a lower rate or free to them. So that's the only, I would caution you on that, because 501c3 does imply that there is some structure and some formality to the organization, as opposed to maybe just a group who's, formed and maybe isn't really committed to the efforts that they're putting forth, that maybe they're just a group that's gotten together for, a set period of time. So, I mean, I just, but yes, we've had that happen before with the co-sponsorship policy and the application process. So I don't know if it's necessarily for the funding, but because I think we've always had this in place, right? That they've always had to be a 501c3. Is that right?
I believe so.
I'd be happy with if there's a 501c3, there's the fiscal sponsor that a small, like a baby nonprofit can do, which is basically where they don't have any of the overhead, but they borrow the status of another nonprofit. I think we can apply the same principle here, is that if there's a 501c3 that is willing to be the co-sponsor for a non-specific event, a 501c3 event, but there is a 501c3 associated, which also speaks to partnerships, that they've reached out, that they have somebody who could be a reflective body for them. I'd be that makes perfect sense. Making sure that there's somebody there.
So I was just going to say, I agree with Christine. I think you're getting into legal issues, and like you say, you have to have a structure. And I actually started a nonprofit, so I'm aware, and I agree. There's a formality, and you have a board, and you're, you have to apply to the state and all that. So I know the city already for the sister cities, because that's the nonprofit I started. You have to be a nonprofit in order for them to give the sister city money. So they will not give you money unless you're a 501c3. So I'm guessing that this wouldn't fly with probably the lawyers and counsel. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. But your suggestion of having maybe a 501c3 host another organization, that might work. Because our organization has done that for someone who didn't have that status.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think you're kind of treading in, kind of wobbly territory there.
But still, I do.
Sure.
I do think that maybe you're right. If it is a legal one, I'm sure that we need to follow the guidelines. But I do support Chair's suggestion. For example, if last time out of the 24 applicants, there is one, I think, three parents who do something, and they ask for $750 on it. So they're like a bootstrapping. They just wanted to see it's worked out with the parents, and they're all coming out nicely. And they wanted to see whether they can city can help to bootstrap, and then they might become a 501c3. So it's like a tier. For example, they might fall into the tier 1, which is less than $1,000. Again, if there is a possibility, those kind of things we should encourage them, because if you force them, those small people, the kind of money request people won't even come here, because if the organization set up for 501c3 itself is big, it's going to be very difficult. And we are putting constraint on those budding entrepreneurial kind of non-profit startups kind of. So they wanted to do something, try it out, it works, and they need some funding. So at least for a tier level, if it is a first tier, it's okay kind of. Again, I'll go through, you will go through the legal, as is pointed out, but I think we should also consider that too. I do support that part.
Is that, and maybe this is just the language of sometimes formal writing that gets lost on me, but is that what's meant by or sponsored by a 501c3? Is that just like co-signed? Because we said be made by a 501c3. Grant request must be made by a 501c3 or sponsored by a 501c3. Are we just debating something that's already in the text and I just don't understand that sponsored means co-signed? Because that is actually what sponsored means, right? If a 501c3 sponsors an event, it's a co-signed event.
It is co-signed.
Never mind, it's already included
I didn't know
there.
that too.
Maybe we can add the language of co-sign just so that there's it's a little bit more reader friendly.
Sponsored means co-signed.
That means that is what. So if we can just add co-sign just so people know that they can, that would be great.
Yep.
Glad we had that 10-minute discussion. Excellent. Anybody else? Feedback, comments, thoughts, questions, concerns? Awesome. Is there anything else you need from us in terms of this? We don't need to take any formal action. I'm assuming you're going to just incorporate our feedback into this?
Yes, I think what I'd like to do is go back here and just make sure that we're all on the same page with the different things that we talked about. Given that we have to make changes on a quick turnaround here to get to the, to be a part of the adopted budget next week, or in a week and a half. So as far as designated funding cap, is there a recommended funding cap that you would like to include or not? And because this is going to be, if you set an amount, we're including this in the beginning portion of the policy, and it'll be brought forward to council for consideration, or leave it out.
Okay, number?
Yeah.
So is this per applicant?
No, well,
or
this
total?
would be, this, we can talk about both. So if you
Yeah.
want to do the big, the maximum funding cap allowed for the entire program, as well as the individual. So we can discuss that at this time. Or if you don't want to, we can discuss that
I think
as
the
well.
maximum one, I don't know whether we can put a cap on it. That's a city and the budget on
I
it.
think
I don't
that's
think that we can
council's-
make. I would love to
council
have
needs
a
to
maximum,
decide.
a
I
million
mean,
plus.
250K sounds like a
Yeah, that's what I was
lovely.
gonna say.
Come on, I
We're
started with
gonna
a
go
million.
high.
Okay, it's
That would have
okay.
funded everybody this year, right?
Yeah,
Almost?
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're going to go out and advertise this a lot and really make a big deal about it, we're going to get so many more applicants, then they need to consider funding it more.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of what happened this year. All of
Yeah,
a
it's
sudden,
good.
there was a lot more communication and marketing.
Which
but
was
then-
amazing, by the way.
Yeah,
That was
which is
amazing.
good.
Really-
So
it was
you need to
big
fund
difference.
it then.
Yeah. We will go after city and we'll go into the council and say, hey, we need more funding. I don't think that's a cap, but individually, I think as I mentioned that I like 20 is really high, even given the current budget allocation of 100K if it is. So my recommendation would be 10K to seal it, but I
Great.
request. This is a cap on it, right?
Cap per
Yeah.
person. How do you feel? What's a number you're comfortable?
What's the number comfortable
The
with?
maximum per organization.
Because it was 20 there, talked about it. So.
Yeah, for this one, maybe, I think,
It's okay if you don't have a preference.
yeah, I don't have much.
Okay. Good.
Well, I think the council needs to give us guidance again. I mean, we have been in the habit of giving $20,000 grants. And so I think if we say it's 10,000, all of a sudden, the prior ones are going to get cut off. If there's, like the Harvest Festival or something that they're doing every year that they generally come in for, and we see that that's something that we want to do. So I'd hate for that cap to be less than what has traditionally been there for this program. So I think 20,000 seems reasonable.
Yeah, I was going to say 20,000 too. That's my.
Because I like to make things complicated.
You want to come into 15? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I actually just to make sure that different organizations are getting funding, I would say an organization can get $20,000 each for 5 consecutive years, after which it's reduced to 15 for 5 years. Some kind of like little wiggle room, so it gives us something. But you need consensus, don't you?
Yeah.
You need consensus. Great, then I'll do 20K, because that's not going to be.
And maybe we should have something to make sure that gets reviewed periodically, because you don't want 30 years from now, it's still 20K.
I hope this goes for a revision, like maybe once in, because you reviewed twice, I believe, so far.
Absolutely. I mean, this is as part of the budget adoption process, you can revisit again and have it adopted again in the next budget adoption as well.
I think maybe this one is not a separate issue. It combined with this evaluation criteria about the tier system.
What are you pointing to?
Which one?
I mean, the 20K, it's not in separate. It's combined with the tier system, about less than 500 and 500 to 1,000 and more than 20K. I think we need further discussion about how this tier system can work. So maybe if for organization, they ask for a small amount, maybe they can get a higher score. So
I
think they just combine.
I think we were just going
things.
through the presentation, so she was clear, and we'll get to that.
All right, so the next part is the separate previous grant recipients from new applicants or higher prioritization. Again, I wasn't saying new, they should get higher prioritization. I was just saying that we should have a segment, maybe like 20% of the budget that is earmarked for, but doesn't have to be required to be spent. And the reason why I say doesn't have to be required to be spent is it's possible that there is a new applicant, but it's just not qualified, or we don't feel like it's qualified for whatever reason. We shouldn't be forced to give that money to them. But there should be an earmark of, I would say, 20% of the total budget that goes towards new applicants. New or low budget, which can incorporate low tier as well, applicants.
We can do that. Okay, we'll find a spot for that. Well, new or low budget, then you have to define low
tier.
budget.
And the tier
Which
system.
tier? Well,
Yeah.
I think those are two separate things.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
can stick to one, just 20% new applicants, or 15%.
I also think you should give yourself some flexibility, too. I
Yeah.
mean, you never know what's going to happen in the future. And if you put too many guidelines and,
Then you make it into the
then you make it difficult.
combinations.
Yeah, there might be an extenuating circumstance, or, I mean, you never know.
Okay. How do we feel on, do we want to give a percentage? We're not feeling very consensus-y on a percentage. So is this just a general concept that at the commissions, it'll be up to the commission's discretion, and we'll keep in mind new applicants going forward?
Well, they could still be in a separate bucket to be maybe evaluated, put them on a separate matrix.
So we could do like the
So-
top 2 organizations in a new applicant bucket will get funded,
Well,
or something like that.
no, just do, sorry.
Evaluate in two separate.
Just evaluate them
In the
separately.
two separately, yeah.
That would be great. We can just do 2 separate evaluation systems. Same process, but just 2 different, so they're not stacked up against each other.
For the new organizations.
And the
Against
repeat.
the
the
repeat.
recurring organizations. Consensus-y? Great.
Yeah, I think
consensus-y.
that's great.
Tiered funding structure. Okay, so
Sorry,
Yeah, go
Chair.
ahead.
Before we go there, in case, again, I hope this problem will not come. So if you have these 2 separate buckets, and if there is not many applicants on the one bucket, the fund can be used on the other
Yeah.
bucket, right?
Yeah.
Obvious. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Okay, so now we have the tiered funding structure. It seemed pretty consensus-y that there are too many.
Yeah.
So we can have less than 1,000, 1,000 to 5,000, and 5,000. I would still have 4. I would personally say under 1,000, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 plus.
Agree.
But
10
I know
to
there
20,
was,
right? Because it's, if
10
it
to
is
20, yeah,
20 is the
there's a cap,
maximum,
'cause
so
it's- right.
10 to 20.
which I know really only cuts down on 1, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think,
I'm sorry, could you?
so the four tier system you're
Yeah,
proposing it.
should we put it down to 3 tiers? I feel like that might just be over bucketing things.
It's a lot of buckets.
A lot of buckets at this point, but I think definitely less than 1,000 seems to be very simple. And similarly, 10,000 to 20,000 seems to be another big bucket. But then looks like the other one is that you're opening from 1 to 10,000. If you
That
shrink it
gap
to
is
3,
really
which is a huge gap.
I mean,
I'm fine with the 3 or 4.
can we
but
do under 2,500 and then 2,500 to 10K plus?
That's okay.
I was going to say, I guess I don't really care either way or the other. I also wasn't part of the, your discussion
sorry, yeah.
before, so I think you have more information than I do, but I guess I'd probably just eliminate the tiers altogether. I also find that too rigid. Anyway, that's my comment, but I guess I don't really, I could go
Yeah.
either way.
So I
I
think
could be convinced either way.
Yeah, I think what the chair proposed, I think that makes sense too, because we don't have to go through the 4, like 1,000, less than 1,000, 1,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 20,000. It's okay. It'll be easy for us to separate the bucket. I feel it's okay.
Cool.
I
So then,
recommend.
from
I
a
support that.
practical perspective, how would you do that? Are you going to have dollars assigned to each one? Are you going to evaluate each tier separately?
It's what
or
they apply in for.
Right. So then,
Which
once you
bucket?
have that and you
Yeah.
know they're in this tier, do you only compare people in a particular tier,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. So if it
and
is-
do you have dollars associated with that, or so?
Well,
Well,
I
I-
think similar to the way that we didn't have a commitment for new versus old, we can't like say we will do X or we
Right.
will do Y, but it will give us an idea of the kinds of the ways that we're distributing our funds to make sure that the little guys, for like a $200 project, they could do like a 300 person event versus like a, you know, I mean, like one of them was like a,
One of them was
the
like that.
origami one
Right.
was like $250 and it could have helped like 300 people. But they didn't get it because it wasn't one of the big items at the top that really needed the funding too. But that was, I think, the thought process on the tiered structure.
Yeah, but I think there are two questions you asked, and I think one, I do not know how we are going to handle. Number one, I think it's easy that will you be evaluating the applicants within those respective tiers? Yes, we will. We will not. But that's a problem we had it. That's one of the reasons I asked for a tier, because I don't know how to compare 750 and then actually 25K was asked by Veteran Sportsman Alliance. That's the highest one, 25K this time. So we don't know how to evaluate 25K into 750, so that's why we asked for a tier. So then we will evaluate within the tier. But your second question, which I don't know whether even we have an answer, is, okay, you have 100K, and how much you allocate to these 4 tiers? Because if there is like 10 people applied under less than 1,000, are you going to give it to all 10? Or what happens if there are 50 people applied under less than 1,000? How many are going to choose? What's the fund allocation for each tier? I think that's your question, which I don't think that we have answered to. Yeah, but I think that's a very good question, and if needed, we can decide. Or I think the first one is simple, but the second one, I don't think that we have an answer. How much fund do you allocate for this 4 tier? If there is 4 tier, how much you will allocate?
And I guess my hesitation to commit to a number is the same hesitation I have to commit to, like, we have to give the new applicants this much money.
Absolutely.
Is because there might be a year where it's like, you know what, we have new applicants, but it's the older applicants that need the money, and one year it might be that the older applicants have managed to find partnerships and then the new applicants get money. So
Okay.
Well, I see what you mean when you say it was hard to compare somebody who's asking for 250 to somebody who's asking 25,000. I get that, but you're also using how much they're asking as a criteria point, and is that reasonable? I don't know.
If I might add something to the conversation, something for the commission to consider, but I'm wondering if 2 other criteria items should be considered, and that is the number of community members that are benefiting from the money that is being given to these organizations. So if they are asking for something, if they are requesting funds to pay for something that is going to help their operation, but perhaps only a handful of people are going to benefit from it, should that be weighed the same way as funds that are being given, for perhaps some sort of a community event that where thousands of people perhaps can benefit from this money? The other item, too, that I was thinking about, and again, I apologize if I'm muddying the waters here, but also about the size of the organization. So you have an organization that is very robust, that has been around a long time, has a lot of resources. Should an organization with a larger membership be weighed the same as a nonprofit group, kind of what this gets back to what our chair was saying, maybe who's just starting out, and they really don't have the financial means to carry out whatever this project or event might be? So I just thought I would throw those 2 items out for your consideration.
But these 2 are already in evaluation criteria, right? So the first one you talked about it, which we did it, which says how many community members it's benefited. It's part of the evaluation criteria, and we did score. The second one is also part of it, but what it says is that give maximum points if they are well-established organization. One of the evaluation criteria is about if it is well-established organization, then they get the maximum point because they get 10 or whatever I forgot in the scoring card. So, but
the
here
recurrent application bullet point second.
Yeah. So the first point is already we did act on it. So I don't think it's a new criteria, which is part of the evaluation criteria on how many community members it's benefited. It's already there. Number 2, we are kind of penalizing those newcomers because there is an evaluation criteria which gives a 10 points or something about a well-established, if this is organization is well-established, whatnot, and if we say yes in the application, if it says yes, we're giving a maximum point. So which defeats what we just talked about it, then because that means we may have to reevaluate that particular one criteria which you used to score. Because which gives only for the well-established, well-run, oiled machine kind of thing. So other than that, but it is part of the evaluation criteria. It is there.
I wonder if it might be beneficial because we had those sub-bullet points that aren't listed out in the evaluation criteria, because that's where there was a little bit more clarification. If there's some kind of way to show the impact of our dollar per person, and that's just more of like a us thing. I don't think that's an applicant thing. But when they apply and they say, because they do, and we saw this information in the application, which was, they're asking for X amount of dollars, Y amount of Cupertino residents, and Z amount of general people. I would actually kind of want to see what the per participant ROI is. Like, we spend $1 for one participant, or is it $10 for one participant? I think that might be.
Yeah, I think that
helpful.
Kevin
and I don't
already
think that's really anything that we need to put in here. I think that's just.
Yeah, that Kevin did
on
the
our
job
analysis
already.
end,
Yeah. Actually, that's already in the evaluation criteria. It's one of the bullet points. Yeah.
Yeah, it was we had them listed out, but the
dollar per.
The proportion wasn't there easy to compare across the orgs. So it's like I could see it for one, but I couldn't see what it looked like in comparison to everything.
That's true.
But that's I think it just us and not this. So, anyways, without getting super in the weeds, are we okay with a 4-tier? I think that this is something that is going to be an iterative process. We'll do this year, and then we'll reassess in a future year. We do need to make sure that we go home and that we have something to give the city council. So if we're okay with 4-tier, we don't have a funding necessarily associated with each of those tiers, but it is something to help us conceptualize when we do our evaluation.
Yep.
What were the, could you confirm what the tiered amounts were?
Less than 1,000, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and then 10 plus.
Okay. Thank you.
10 to 20.
10 to 20, not 10 plus, 10 to 20, correct.
Okay. And then, let's see, I had, going back to the, did you want to have this as part of the evaluation criteria in terms of adding this to the ranking sheet of assigning points?
I actually agreed. I don't think we need this particular bullet point. This didn't really do anything to my scores much at all.
No, I mean, it could be a piece of information so that you can.
Info, but not points.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
And even I asked some of those, I wrote in those because they said the rental is $4,000, and I said why they don't go to Quinlan and ask for even rent there instead of renting somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we need to worry about it.
Great, thank you. And moving right along, the next section here are some other restrictions and guidelines. Are you okay with all of these, or do you have anything else you want to add to this or remove?
I guess my question here is, I actually think this is all fine. My question is actually on the last one. Shouldn't it be the inverse? Shouldn't be events that use City of Cupertino grant funding must use a city logo, not with our, it should be a requirement so that people know that the City of Cupertino is involved with this?
Currently, it's not a requirement. That's something we can definitely propose.
That's exactly, I was about to say.
So that was just if you wanted to use it, but we can definitely say, if we're providing you funding, then we can.
Yeah, it is sponsored by Cupertino, City of Cupertino,
if there's
whatever.
collateral, now I don't think at Deer Hollow Farm I want a giant Cupertino thing on on the barn per se, but if they have a flyer or something or a website, then we show our community connects with our city connects with the community.
But it's a good note that it should conform to all requirements of the city for our logo.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So only one question I have is the full financial statements. I know there is 2 applicants fully submitted a full package. I think the West Valley one, I think there was maybe 100, a lot of, right? But many of them just talked about few lines. And I don't know, when you say full financial statements are required, and again, this falls into we are not verifying anything. I know that was a good information, but I didn't go through all of those. It's a full financial statement, and then I didn't feel like, why should I go and spend time on
Yeah.
it? And few people didn't even give it.
Is that something
why
that
it's
the city staff looks through for verification? Is that why it's there, or is there some kind of, or is that just we want them to show that they're doing stuff?
City staff just, we like to go through it if we have them. And again, it's just provided if it's applicable, but it's not a requirement at this time, so.
But I guess my question is why is, like, is there a need for city staff? Like, if you guys have a purpose for it, like, go for it. But I don't know.
No,
that.
on the application, we already do ask
the breakdown.
the breakdown,
Yeah.
so that might be sufficient enough. You know, having it
Yeah.
required seems that it might not be necessary.
Yeah, unless otherwise you are planning to refer, if I'm a repeat, and if I got a $10,000 or $20,000 last year, if I come back again, and that's an income, and that's from city, and if you have to declare it in your income statement, in the financial statement. If it shows up there, okay, City of Cupertino, 20K. If you are planning to verify, then this makes sense. For the repeat ones. For the first one, I have no idea how we are going to do. But again, just my comment, I'll leave it to the city and decide on it. So.
And we provide if requested, or
Yeah,
we can.
provided if requested, I think is fine.
Yeah, I was
Otherwise,
going to
yeah.
agree, actually, I was going to say financial statements, if available. So that brings me back to, you said in the grant application, do they have to provide a budget? Is that? Because to
that
me,
is
that's almost more important than the financial statements, because you were talking about these small organizations.
Yeah.
They may not have something like that.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, if just say like full financial statements if like given if requested. Like provide
That'll work.
provide full financial statements if requested. Okay, cool. I think we're good on the rest of this.
And I think the full financial statement, maybe city collect this information just to be safe, because when they apply for the community funding, they only show us this specific program they want the funding to fund. But maybe in their full financial statement, they also fund some other program. If that's not complying with some city goal, or maybe something we don't like. So I think that's just to be safe. To be safe.
Have we had that as a? Has that been an issue in the past, that, you know, a community organization is asking us for funding for one project, but it turns out that they're doing some other things that might not be in line with city priorities, so we don't want to support a specific organization? Has that ever happened? I mean, it's Cupertino, but like, you know.
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. We can look into that to see if there has been any issues, but
I mean, if we don't know about it, I feel like we'd hear about it.
But I think it's the grants you're looking at that they're applying for a specific, you know, for a specific project that has to align with what the city, you know, guidelines are, right? Or the city's goals, not necessarily the other things that the organization does.
I mean,
also,
it's irrelevant to this.
Yeah,
so.
and I've sat on another grant committee group, and we never asked for financial statements. We asked for budget, not financial statements.
I do think clarity of budget would be better. I don't think that the organizations really took that seriously. A lot of times I would just see a lump sum, and I'm like, that does not cost that much money. Like, I literally Googled, I was like, that did not cost that much money. I could, you know, I would be able to pick out cheaper things than whatever they picked out. And I'm not the expert. Most organizations know what it is that they need, and they've picked budget, like prices accordingly. So it'd just be good to make sure that that they do have an actual, like, broken down budget.
Yeah, one of the, just looking through it here, the question number 9 says, please provide a line item breakdown of how the funds will be used in the categories below. So it does break out admin staff, dollar amount, materials, equipment, dollar amount, entertainment, dollar amount.
It
room
does.
rental.
The application asks for that. I don't know if the grantees or the applicants.
They're filling that out.
Yeah, they're not filling it out.
Yep.
Well,
So we should
they'll
make
just
it
be
a-
like, oh, here's like whatever, and you're like, that's not. That was like a $10,000 line item or $5,000 line
I
item
see.
for entertainment is not helping. Yeah, provide that.
Sure. Okay.
Cool. All right. Next thingy.
And it looks like here we want to, the last part is just the procedure. And how did we feel about the last bullet of adding some sort of written report?
Great, makes sense.
Yeah, that's,
And we're just going to modification instead of the 45 days from the program
end of the
event,
year.
have it just, the beginning of the calendar year. So that'll be.
The one thing I would add is that when the Parks and Recreation Commission evaluates and provides funding and recommendations to the council, and this might be controversial, it would be great to request or recommend to all of the applicants that it's coming to the Parks and Recreations Commission, because I know a lot of the people on the list weren't at the meetings where we were having these discussions, and it would have been it would have been real nice to be able to be like, hey, I have this question about your application. So if we can recommend or procedurally invite the applications, or in the application itself somehow say, we recommend that you have at least one member of your organization present for both the presentation of community funding as well as the budget line item discussion of community funding for both of those meetings. If we're giving them money, they should be here, in my opinion.
Now you're saying to have that added in the application?
Either in the application or in the, I don't know where it would go. In the procedure part, to me, it made sense. It's like, applications due on March 1st, Administrative Services reviews the applications. Parks and Recreations Commission evaluates and provides funding recommendations to the council. Parentheses, program must be present.
Correct.
Or recommended that program attend.
Yeah, I would say recommended. So I was on 2 of those, groups that applied for the grant, and I did get an email saying just that. So, but I don't know if it's just organic at, the staff level saying, oh, I should do this, or.
I think it was our staff being really diligent about sending out these emails. I think it would be good upfront for them to know that that's an expectation.
I think that's a good idea to put that in.
yeah,
there, too.
I do agree that I think that will.
Recommend, though, I would say recommend.
Recommend.
I mean, if they don't want to come.
Yeah, exactly.
3 minutes less than then you have to leave.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
yeah,
it will really help if we have questions so they can answer right away.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, we can add that here as to recommend they should attend the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. And yes, staff did want to reach out to all the organizations, and so.
Yeah, because I know our staff tried really hard, but sometimes these community orgs, if they don't know right from the get-go when things are happening, they just
Then they may not.
Then they just get confused.
Mm-hmm. The only thing is that there won't be a date listed because we don't know exactly what date. It would just be on the lookout for an email or something like that.
Even something like that is, enough of an alert, so it's not like they missed it and they find it later or something like that. Cool.
It'll be April, though, right?
It would most likely be April.
Right?
I mean,
there's only one meeting. I mean, we usually
Yeah.
have the,
that's true.
the
Right.
That's true.
budget
It's the
session
April
in
meeting, so
May,
we can say-
it kind of has to be
Well,
the
yeah.
April commission.
That
right.
actually would work.
The April
then. We can just
commission
say,
meeting.
They're also
Yeah.
forcing function for us, right? So they'll say
You're
that,
like, we're
okay,
done,
you
it's
have to be
happening.
on April. So.
Okay, excellent. And we have any more slide things? Okay, so I did have those several points that I want to make sure that, we're in agreement with, and everybody did bring up a couple of independent things. One is the one org should apply for one comprehensive budget rather than one organization submitting many for different programs.
Agree.
Agreed? Does that work?
Yes. I'll figure out where to place that.
Should be in the guideline, not guidelines, I think.
That can be under the
Application,
guidelines.
Application,
That can be under
requirements or
guidelines.
right?
Okay, cool. And then on the application, I don't think this needs to go in this part at all, but in the application to record if it's a one-time use or a recurring programmatic use. This makes a difference to me how I ranked them. Yes, no,
Yeah.
any objections?
Yes.
Cool. We did that, partnerships, that was actually super important to me. We talked about external funding sources. I want to know if they've met adding to that application. And actually in the evaluation criteria, maybe not as a full point or full independent bullet point, but maybe we can add to the, demonstrated effort to secure funding from other sources and/or partnerships with other organizations. Any opposition to it?
No, I thought that was already there in the evaluation
I
criteria.
didn't,
No?
when I looked
Okay,
at
I
it
was
the
just-
other day, I didn't.
Okay, it was not there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't see it. It was the financial side, it wasn't the
Oh, I
partnership
see, in the
side.
partnership side, okay. Oh, yeah, okay, I see, yeah. Are you getting your funding from different sources? That's what
Source?
it asked
Yeah.
for? But are we encouraging the collaboration partnership with the others
Yeah.
one? Yeah, emphasizing that would be really agree.
So the bullet point in under evaluation criteria, the first bullet point on the second page, demonstrated effort to secure funding from other sources, and/or securing partnerships with other community or city organizations.
Yeah.
And then outreach and marketing. We can put that as like something in the application that just says, I understand that by receiving community grant applications from the city of Cupertino, I will, do outreach beyond, to additional members of the community outside of our existing organization. So that way it's open and inclusive. Cool. Anything else?
I don't think that we have any. Do you have any more? I don't think that's the last slide, right?
I don't have any more questions on the policy. I just have a question on what's going to happen next. What's going to happen? Are you going to present the funding recommendations that the commission came up with last month and then separately present, and here's a policy for
Revising.
moving forward? I mean, because this policy isn't applicable to this year.
Correct.
Right? So how are you going to work
sure.
that?
Yes, we are going to be including the funding recommendations as part of our PowerPoint presentation, along with the rest of the entire budget. So, and the policy will be included in the budget document, and we will have a slide that will just highlight that changes have been made to the community funding policy, and this is what's recommended. So it'll be included as a part of the budget adoption hearing. So a couple of slides to
So this
give that
is
information.
then influencing how this is then actually being applied to this year's community.
It is not, right.
No.
This policy is
for
going, is
next year's budget
for
cycle.
fiscal year
19-20.
19-20,
Okay,
correct.
cool, just confirming that.
Yeah.
That is correct, yes.
Awesome, woohoo, sounds good, consensus.
I mean, the only concern is that if the council members start to see this whole different policy and they go, well, why weren't these applied this year? I don't want them to get confused
Yeah,
and off in the weeds.
And that does
on
happen.
the next year's policy with this year's
Yeah.
allocation.
I agree with you. I think this can be presented that, okay, based on the guidelines and the policy we have, this are done. But as part of the process, right, the commission gone through it and then came back and say, we should be modifying this policy for better allocate much more nicely. That's a new one, which you can present later. But I think first one should go through the allocation and say, as part of the learning, we did it. And you don't have to combine it. You can present it later too. Because if you combine it, I see that, oh, stop there. Why we need to go through kind of. So I would say both should be separated because the lessons learned, it's retrospective, what we have learned it, which we are going to apply to the next year.
Absolutely. The community funding section will be separate from it. We won't tie it together.
Okay.
Solid, thank you.
I mean, you could have it in your back pocket in case it comes up, but I wouldn't.
Well, we are working on it.
So
We are working on it still. So because you need to
that
go
means you can present the current policy and the 2019 evaluation result, bound them together, and then present the next year policy. So that's separate.
Yeah.
Just make it clear.
Exactly. I don't. Personal opinion, please don't combine because it will definitely create confusion and then start questioning back and forth. I totally agree.
Yeah, we can separate it.
Very good point.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Any other things? Otherwise, it feels really consensus-y. Great.
Yeah,
You
this
got
is really nice.
consensus-y. Consensus. You got consensus.
We
on
got
that.
consensus. We
something.
did it. Was that the shortest that we've done the community funding?
I think it is. Fantastic.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Happy to make it so speedy. think this was the first agenda item I was like the longest on. Where's my, there we go. Excellent. So now we are going to jump into another hefty, exciting agenda item. Continue the discussion of the 2019-2020 Parks and Recreation Commission work plan items based on the approved city work plan. Question, do we need a 5-minute bio break? Or shall we power through? All right, powering through. Agenda item number 3. Do we have any specific conversations and topics and things we want to go on? Who's presenting on this? Because we have a lot of things here.
So the reason why this item came to the commission was the staff had recently received direction from the city manager's office about like all the documents that were given to you, and because the commission had already discussed these items before, this is more of just to kind of pick up that conversation, because based on the new guidelines that were given out, the commission would now need to put together a draft work plan that would then need to get approved by city council, and this would need to happen before July 1st, meaning this would need to happen soon.
So it's the modification to this one based off of this thing.
Yes, and then basically incorporated
these
into that
things.
template that was also sent to the commission.
Which is this one.
Yes.
Okay. Does that make sense, or should I do a brief review of what he just said? Cool.
Align these with city council's priorities.
Yes, and
their
with
work plan.
Yes, and with the recently approved city work plan that just came out, that's why it's based on that.
Which is this.
Yes, the really
Right.
big.
And
yes.
I just went through and wrote down all the ones that pertained to Parks and Rec. So I know we have some of these already on our work plan and maybe some that we need to add.
Great. So since you have this handy list, does
A
it make
handy
sense? I
list.
just want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're on the same page.
Yeah, yes.
Awesome.
It is fit already into the new template,
So
or we are going to do
there's
that?
some things that are in here, and we need to make sure that what's in here is included in our
Correct.
work plan.
Work program.
And then there's a couple things that if, we want to talk about, hey, like there's other stuff that's coming up, we just need to make sure that that's aware and we have fit it into something that is relevant here.
So didn't you send us another item with an updated work plan that starts in July 2011?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
July 11,
2019. Is that here in paper?
Yeah, that's there.
Is that one? Oh, I must have
Item for
lost that
possible
somewhere.
inclusion.
There's a lot of sheets.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, okay, I have a soft copy, so that's cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was telling. Kevin has given a lot of homework. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Okay,
All right,
So
but I
that's-
liked your beautiful,
my list.
your list, because that's what's been on this,
There
so
you go.
why don't we go ahead and go through that.
That's the city's list.
So Lawrence Mitty, but that is in progress, with our city, with our staff, with our Parks and Rec staff, correct, Christine?
Yeah, it says things to schedule
Yeah,
over here.
so
Yeah.
just for our knowledge as well, where are we on that?
Which
Do you
line
know
item
the
is
Lawrence Mitty update? Because I know that's on the city's.
Is it on this sheet?
Yes,
Chief?
it's the bottom of
Oh,
page 3.
yeah, right, it's on this one.
Bottom of page.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have any updates in terms of
on.
where the city is with regards to that.
Okay,
But at least it is in, okay.
It says
it's on
in
our-
progress.
it's on our things to schedule list, so I'm just gonna put a little note for us that we need to follow up on that. The community garden improvements, which actually falls under our, that's supposed to be in
Yeah, that's the
June.
first
Yeah,
item on
that's
the-
coming up, so that will be,
You actually have this on December 5th. Community Gardens Project, I'm assuming that's the same thing. Community, December 5th,
Yep.
2019.
I thought don't we also have one coming up for
Soon on the
here? this
Earlier?
micro.
Yeah, we also have it coming up for the June meeting.
Oh,
Is that something that,
Are we going to have it?
Kevin,
is
do
it
you know?
ready to come?
I think we had planned it for that with the hopes that we'd be able to get an update on that for June to see what the plan would be.
I think we'll be at the budget study session on May 13th. I think we'll get a better idea as to whether or not that project is going to be funded in the new fiscal year.
Okay.
I see.
Excellent.
So I have a quick question. So this one that you made, the updated one, you or maybe Christine can answer this, was this based on talking to Jeff and seeing that these things would happen at these particular times so that you scheduled them, the time sensitive wise, or does that make sense?
You're talking about the list, right?
I'm talking about the
Items for
commission
possible
work, items
Yes.
for possible
So-
inclusion, and then you sort of broke them down into different months.
So that stemmed originally from the original list, right, that Jeff had presented to the
Okay.
commission. And then it's updated in that, like, that is the version after the commission had gone through all of the items, prioritized them as short or long term. Also, like, said when the commission would want to view these items. So it's updated in that sense, but not updated.
Yeah, you haven't done any matching of this one along with the city, the plan. I think.
This was just updated
Just based on our inputs.
Yes, after the commission's
Excellent.
input.
It's not necessarily, we know this is coming up in July, or we
Yes.
know this is coming up in December, that's why we put it here.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm just putting it out there for the commission to decide. This is a lot to go through right now, and staff is aware that in previous years the commission has always done a special meeting to kind of go really dive into this. So we could try to do that again if the commission would desire that, so that way we really could go through item by item, and also to have Jeff here as well, the director here, so he could also help us guide.
And when do we need to
things.
have this completed by?
July.
Yeah, July. Well, so basically to be approved by city council, it would have to go at
Through
the
the
very
process.
latest in June, in the first or second meeting in June.
Okay, so we basically
So we
have to
should
have a
do that.
special meeting in the next 3 weeks.
Or we go with what we've already hashed out, right? I mean, this was something that we already discussed, unless, of course, Carol wasn't here, she wants to weigh in.
I
But these
mean-
are things we already sort of prioritized, though, right?
Yeah, but there are some things that were here, like the strategic partnerships with nonprofits, that's not on here. That unless I missed.
But we could add it, though.
Yeah, so that's what
Right.
I'm saying. We
So,
still
like,
have to do
yeah.
that part before.
So maybe what we do is go through this list, see what's already scheduled,
Yeah.
It's not.
and then look at the ones that aren't and try
And then
and fit
see,
them in.
yeah, at least make sure that they're on the list
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah, if
Sounds
that's
good?
all the task, I think we should be able to finish it. I don't know whether
We
need to.
did have, typically we go a little
We-
bit more in depth.
Oh, in depth on each
but
one?
I think
Okay.
at least for today, let's make sure we go through this so we
At
know that
least.
we followed the 1920 work program and we have the preliminary here, and then we'll work on finding some additional time
Got
to
it. Okay,
to
just
chat.
to make sure that there is no gaps between
There's
those
no
two.
gap,
That's all
yeah.
we are
Yeah.
looking at today.
Right now.
Seems
Okay.
to me that's
Okay.
Perfect.
So the master plan, that comes up regularly throughout our thing. Our strategic plan is in our August 1st meeting. The use of athletic fields and parks, that we do actually have, yes, that's in September. I think that's when we're doing the utilization data of facilities at parks. And then we have the athletic fees, permits, and field scheduling discussion in October. So that is on our list for 1920. Teen engagement, we have teen stress
Yeah,
events
that-
quarterly update. Sorry, did you have
Yeah,
a?
no,
I don't
sorry.
want to power through and miss something.
No, you're right. I think I was saying that we
there's
had
another
this
one.
one, but
Yeah.
this
the
is a
all-inclusive
team
playground.
community, but we do only stress. So is there any bigger expectation?
I think that we should have.
A bigger- yeah, I do.
The teens, I think it should actually just be teen quarterly update,
Correct,
not
rather
teen
than just a
stress
stress
quarterly update, which if everyone is
Agreed.
comfortable with, we can make it a
Absolutely.
Yeah.
bigger
yeah.
point, okay.
We're gonna go see what this says, if there's any more detail on this too, but go ahead, I'll see if
Okay.
there's any more
It
detail
looks
on
like
And
you
then
this.
skipped the all-inclusive playground. That was
Is that on
higher.
there? Oh,
All-inclusive playground is on our July 11th
yeah.
meeting.
I missed
This
that
one.
Which
Yeah.
I just want to
That's
be
in
like
their
very clear. There was, it seems like I went to the city council meeting, a couple weeks ago, and when they were talking about the two
Dog
of
leash
our
policy?
things. No, not dog off leash, the ride share and the CEQA for our master plan. So I was here for that. There's a misunderstanding around the all-inclusive playgrounds. That feasibility study for, or not, I don't know if I'm using the right word. We've already done research
study.
on which locations work and which don't work. And there was a decision made by the commission based off of the research, and I'm happy to share that again, but I think there was a misunderstanding with city council. They were like, well, why are we doing it at Jollyman? We should do it at Creekside. And we've done, like, the consultants were explicitly clear about the limitations of that location between the infrastructure, the amenities, the parking, the traffic problems, the physical inability of building such a playground in Creekside, which is why we couldn't do it at Memorial Park, because people who have special needs, the sound is actually a really big problem in that area. So we need something that's not going to be as loud and have festivals and things like that, because that will cause problems for these children, or just people who are special needs in general. So just to make that perfectly clear, if that ever comes up, that conversation, that research, that consultant work has already been done, and we can have like a refresher on that.
But I would, even I didn't know, but I would like to hear that too. But I think we should send it out if the commission already gone through this process, all the wedding.
Yeah,
it should
spend,
be
like,
reminded, because a lot of council members are new. So it is perfectly fine to say, hey, I know that this came up, but as per thing, this is the work based on the recommendation. Send them the complete report and one, that would really help.
That's a great idea.
I should mention, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that feasibility report has been put on the city webpage. I think Gail had mentioned that to me. So it is now available for your
But
review.
they may not be knowing it. Maybe even they may have to be presented. Somebody has to even present that report and say, hey, look at this one. The decision is based on this. They may have the still right to question that and say still, that's okay. But there's a lot of effort went and looks like what I'm hearing.
A lot of effort.
And money.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
A lot of
Then it should
effort
go.
went into it.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
we
great.
talked to some other people when they mentioned this location. They said only in Jollyman Park, only one option was given. They never heard our city compared it with any
With
other.
all
maybe-
these other locations.
Yeah, the Creekside
Then I
and the
think it's important
Memorial
for the
Park.
community also
And we
to know.
talked to the staff of the Magical Bridge, and they said, oh, so they only heard about Jollyman Park. They never heard about any other
Can we
names.
just
So they
kind of
didn't know.
focus on scheduling
Yeah, I
instead
agree.
of discussing
You can
the
go and
items?
find the
'Cause
feasibility
we could
study.
be
Thank
here
you,
all
thank
night.
you for the chair check.
All-inclusive is under
I
Public
apologize for
Works.
that. My apologies. So we do have teen engagement. We're going to couple that with teen stress going forward. Art and
Sorry,
culture.
and you said that we will not call teen stress and we will also have a teen engagement or teen quarterly update, correct?
Teen quarterly update.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Art and culture festival and programs. Okay, I need to.
So we have the neighborhood events recap.
That's May 7th.
Yeah, but this, I remember when I read this, it
else?
was broader, right?
4th
There-
of July.
Which one that
Okay,
is?
performances.
I'm sorry, what is that called? Art and
I think it's towards the end, let's see.
Yeah, I'm like looking, I'm trying to
Financial
find, I just.
sustainability
Is
wrote it
that
on
Art and Cultural Events Festival and Programs, bottom of page 9?
Page 9, okay.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Perfect, yes, features, featuring,
Neighborhood events program each summer.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
is
Project
that
event.
just the same thing? Because they're capitalized differently and I got confused, so I wasn't sure, if arts and cultural programs, if that's one thing, or if they meant the arts and things that we do in our neighborhood events.
They're talking about the neighborhood events.
it
If
says
you read this,
ensure
they're-
that is within the neighborhood events program.
Okay, so
That's
it's
what they
just
call it,
basically our own program.
Yeah.
And it says
Okay.
summer 2019.
which is already you have it on
Okay,
2020.
perfect, then that sounds good. This is July 1st, but we're implementing it before, that's fine. So yeah, that's already on our list and on our docket, except it's on our docket for November 7th.
But why is this
That's
September
a- that's a
29th?
That's a recap. So it was supposed to be this
Oh.
month, neighborhood events
Yeah.
schedule brief, May,
November.
But we had to push that till June.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
gonna be pushed till June.
I think it's maybe they're still trying to decide who's going to run that program, or maybe they just decided who was going to run that program. I kind of heard something
Yeah.
today, so maybe you can speak to that.
Yes, so we just hired staff. So they will be starting this coming week. And so we're in the process of putting the schedule together. So it was not confirmed for today's meeting.
That's fine.
So I would assume that by June,
June we'll
we
have it.
should have some idea as to what the schedule is.
Great. We'll put that on our website for June. Excellent. Then we have the Parks and Rec marketing plan and program review. That's already on our list to do. I think it's like, and then we have our marketing training and stuff in November. Library lease. That I don't remember being on
Yeah.
our
What
thing
is that?
at all.
I'm sorry, where is that
So,
one? Library lease. Why that is?
Unless it's to be scheduled. It is under here, though, under Parks and Rec, isn't it?
Oh, on the Parks and Rec?
Yeah. I
Would you mind
thought
telling me where I
so.
couldn't?
I remember seeing that as well.
That one's on page 18, like, yeah, second
Oh, the
line,
last
second
one.
line,
Do you
yeah.
just have these memorized, Kevin?
Yeah, it's on the back side. Come
Joys of
Backside,
technology.
okay, we're like looking for everything else.
Come on, okay.
Um,
Sign a new lease with the library, JPA, for the use of city library.
So why are
policy.
we part of that?
Right.
Why?
Oh,
We are-
you know, I think it's just because Jeff is a part of it. It's Public Works and City Attorney and Recreation and Community Services, because a lot of the,
Yeah, I think this is between the
this is
Santa
a
Clara
city-
County, and I don't think
yeah,
that
this
we
is a
should
city
be
stuff.
involved.
This
It's a
is
city.
not- Yeah, this won't be an us
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah.
Strategic partnerships with nonprofits. Oh, actually, this is something that I was
Yeah.
particularly, yeah, this should be,
It is there already here.
where is it?
Oh, no,
in
I'm saying
our-
ours. No,
Where-
yeah, it is there in the same page
I
here,
don't-
but
I don't
I don't think that we have it.
Okay, yeah,
No, we
I
called
think-
it the CUSD, and we said we want to do things to be scheduled, if you look into the first one.
Yeah, I think that's one. I think that there's also other partnerships that we.
That's all it is.
Yeah, we were exploring, like all the ones that are listed here, the library, the Y, West Valley.
And the
like,
other
school
commissions,
district.
what.
The swimming place, which was huge,
Correct.
Rancho Rinconada, like
Correct.
all of these, I think we need to see as like we should have this meeting. So we will add that to our items to be scheduled, because that's gonna, my guess, be a big,
Yeah, because it looks like each month you will have one, assuming
Yeah.
that the number of organizations we have, we might end up having it to discuss about each one of them, but.
Yes.
do you have thoughts? I mean, you're the lead on that, right?
That's an ongoing item.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we can certainly have a meeting later in the year if you would like, but that's really intended to be an ongoing effort
Okay.
with various organizations throughout the city.
Correct.
I think it'll also be cool for us to just like know
Yeah.
for the things that we might not know about.
Yeah.
Because you guys like work so hard, and we need to.
And I don't know why it says on hold in the city work program. It says on hold. Why? Timeline, status,
oh.
everything is on hold.
Yeah, that's interesting. Then why, yeah.
Strategic partnership with non.
Okay, so maybe things come to us
So,
as they arise,
evolve.
like this,
Okay.
the Rancho
We'll wait for
Rinconada
it.
or something, yeah.
Excellent. And then we have the policies on nonprofit support. That's
Before
what
we
that
jump to
also-
that,
You just talked.
I would think the art in unexpected places, that's an opportunity for us to work with the Fine Arts
Fine Arts
Commission.
Commission, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here, it actually says that under progress to date.
Well, it says that it's the
Yeah.
Parks and Recreation Department, but the commission is not mentioned there, so I
Which
thought
one
that
is
was kind of odd.
Yeah, collaboration
We
install
should
mural wall.
have,
Oh, it sounds
we
like this
should be
has already
working with
been
them.
decided and it's community development or something?
sorry, which one?
Complete
And
mural,
there's
in
only
progress, complete mural.
well.
So maybe
yeah,
we
so
can get a
maybe we need
report
to-
on it
yeah,
or something?
At least. I mean, it's not just one thing.
No, it's
The point
supposed
is,
to be
it
several
should
private
be,
spaces, yeah.
Yeah.
it should be a
Public and
program
private spaces,
that
yeah.
we want to,
Well, it's also,
in place,
the
right?
budget's been allocated for it, $10,000.
well, that's for the one item, so
Oh,
It's a pilot.
I think it would be good for us to at least,
To
you know,
hear
it says,
about
I
it.
mean, our department is working with the Fine Arts Commission, so it would be good for us to
To hear
connect
it,
with them
yeah.
as well.
Absolutely.
We do have an agenda item later, today about, opportunities for
right.
collaboration, so I think
Yeah.
this is a really good
That's
feeder
why I read it.
for that,
Okay.
item. Art in unexpected places. Okay. And then policies on nonprofit support, which we just talked about. No, this is
This is different.
This is the broader, like what we're going to do in terms of like giving space and giving discounts and things like that for nonprofits.
Oh, I see.
That does need to be added to our list as well.
So this is more than the community funding. What is the other things we need to do? Oh, it says including meeting room space and
Yeah, so there's an
office
entire, like,
space and-
we have a bunch of and I don't even know if a lot of them are formalized, but we give nonprofits a lot of space, and
Oh,
we'll
I
give them
see.
discounts for certain things, or we'll comp certain things, and there just needs to be a review of that policy.
I see,
to
that's-
make sure
okay.
that there's
Got
it's
it.
unilateral, are we serving like Cupertino nonprofits, are we serving other nonprofits, like what's the,
Okay.
in terms of those kinds of things that we give away.
Okay.
So
That we
can
need to
add
get that, okay.
I think that this is good in terms of just making sure our work plan aligns with this. There are several things on here that I did not see, and maybe hefty, but I didn't see the shuttle bus is listed as Public Works and not as us, but I would like for us to be a part of that effort, because it's going to be like very married to neighborhood events, community events. We're in touch with everybody next door. Like, our distribution channels should be involved in that as well. And I think that we need a special meeting to make sure that we actually have a longer set of time, because we're gonna hit 10 o'clock by the time the meeting's over. So are we comfortable with scheduling a special meeting to review potential ideas for inclusion in this?
So, I'm sorry, you said the potential ideas to include in the city program?
Yeah.
In our work plan.
In our work plan or in the city work program? I'm sorry. I
But
missed.
Kevin, we can still put stuff in here, right?
No, that's why, this is sealed.
This is the set
Yes,
one.
that
So
was
then,
the
so then
second.
anything additional is just stuff that we can do ourselves.
Exactly. As long as we satisfy what the
What
city
they
is
have, which we
prioritized,
do.
sure, we will do. Over and above, it's our
Our,
thing, right?
yeah.
Yeah, we should be able to.
So I think the reason it's under Public Works and also the all-inclusive is under Public Works is because it's been approved by council and they're going ahead with a pilot program, and the same with the all-inclusive. They've gotten the grant and they've gotten the go-ahead to fund it, right? So I think that's why it's moved from
Oh,
Parks and
okay.
Rec to
Great.
To the
Public
public.
Works.
Okay, we
I still think
capitalize
it's
it.
okay to have maybe an
Fantastic.
update from Jeff or, maybe the pilot program or something. I think would be great to have that come back and, just
Well,
get a
absolutely,
report.
as the design gets finalized, we'd want to get public input on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, great. Well, then that's my
Good.
overexcitement. We added what was needed, Kevin, I believe, into our work plan. Please let us know if we need to do something different.
Sorry, one quick
Mm-hmm.
question. Is that all the things we talked about should go into this kind of format? Is that
Oh,
expected?
yeah, that
Okay.
little thingy bob here.
Yeah, I believe so. Most likely, staff will kind of
Okay.
Try to fit it in.
translate that to
Translate
that,
Excellent,
and
okay.
then maybe we could bring this back in the June meeting since it's early
That'll be
enough.
great, yeah.
And
That
then
would
kind of
be
have you
ideal.
guys finalize everything,
Perfect.
and then hopefully take it to council right after that. But we'll need to confirm with Jeff and everything before then, so.
Excellent.
Wait for him to come back.
Sounds good.
Sure.
All right, we can go ahead and move on to review of future agenda items and prioritization for Parks and Recreation Commission. No.
Which is kind of what we just did, isn't it?
Anybody have
That was the
anything that we didn't just talk about?
I think a lot of that's on there, the things that I'd like to see, so.
Excellent. Seeing as that is not on there, or everything is on there, we have the CUSD joint use agreement, neighborhood events schedule brief. We're going to get a update on the strategic plan priorities and our themes, which is going to be a hefty one. And if it's available by then, the community gardens project. Excellent. Since we have nothing on that, we can jump to item number 6, which is propose ideas and discuss possible opportunities for collaboration with other commissions. So previously, we had requested that we have an opportunity in our meetings to talk about things that we would want to do or want to work on with other city commissions and what that might look like and what kinds of things that we would want to know from them, and if there's like a joint meeting or something that we can have with other commissions and things like that. So that was the impetus for number 6. I think we just briefly talked about working with the Fine Arts Commission, that there's a lot of intersection points between what we're doing and what we're building and how we plan on, you know, reviving all of our parks and all of our recreation centers. I think that it should be pretty hand in hand. I don't think anything should be ugly anymore, because we can have this these wonderful art installations across our city, and I think it would be great to understand kind of what that looks like. And, you know, we can have our own cool thing that's just Cupertino, that's an art installation or a mural or something in our parks, and really build that into the systems of the things that we have. I think it would also be cool if, as we're building the all-inclusive playground, the art and the things that are used inside of that playground are from our community. You know, it would be nice if it's maybe a cup of chai instead of a cup of tea in the little playground area. You know, just a joking example. I know that we have several other ideas across commissions. I know that we have things happening in our like housing and bike ped and all these others. So I'll open it up to the other commissioners if you have concepts or ideas that you are.
Yeah, so when I was in Library Commission, we wanted to work with all the other commissions. We started some programs on it. Now, after I came in here, I think the Library Commission, a couple of commissioners also approached me, and then the TIC Commission also. We wanted to do some programs associated with it. We used to call the Digital Gateway, which I was driving it from the library side, which is nothing but in the library in the front, at a high level, there will be a kind of think of it as a flat panel completely, and talking about all the events happening through all commissions. It get fed to that, and people can see it, and they can register it, volunteer it, and kind of, so it is a big project. We started with it. We even presented to the council, and now they came back and say, hey, now it's an opportunity. You started on the other side. Can we collaborate? So they approached me. I said, hey, yeah, we do have an item to work with it. Maybe I asked them to come back and present to us what it is so that we can do. So yeah, there is an opportunity for us, our commission, to work with the Library Commission. Almost all commissions do a kind of a feed into it, which gets into the library, and then they will know all the projects we do and updates and status, kind of, with the TIC Commission driving it as a technical side of it. So that's a big project, but it might touch all commissions.
That would be really interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit more.
I started on it like
project.
4 years back, but the funding was not given by the council at the time, because library is an advisory commission, so it was not. But now it's every commission is ready to pull in, and if there is a budget allocated, they wanted to do. So I will make sure that they come and present to us. That's
great.
That
would be. It would be great to hear more about the program and how it all functions.
That's the only one I have for now. So.
Awesome. Any other feedback on potential collaborations? The Bike Ped Commission, we've been wanting to have a joint session with them to do a broader analysis of everything from how do we connect all of our parks recreation services in a bike ped friendly way, as well as the regional things that they're working on right now. We had a presentation a number of months ago, but I think things have actually shifted since we had that last presentation. And if there are things that we need to be doing and focusing on as we develop this our strategic implementation of our master plan, I think it's really essential that we include them and have a conversation with them. So either having them come in to do a presentation or a joint session, I think would be.
And I think the Fine Arts Commission, because we are going to have a lot of community events, especially in summer, maybe the Fine Arts Commission can help us and to.
That's a great idea.
Work.
Getting the Fine Arts Commission engaged with our neighborhood events.
So one other question, just for maybe Kevin and Christine and maybe the Jeff director, for the staff. We come up with this work program. We are going to fit it in the new template and make sure that it aligns with it. I'm sure that every commission has been asked to do the similar one, right? But that's another great opportunity. I'm not sure how we are going to achieve that, is that there'll be a lot of overlap, and they want to do this stuff, which we also wanted to do it, but we don't have visibility of every one of their program to how they are connected. That's an awesome opportunity for us to collaborate too. It's already implicit collaboration if they are working on a similar project like ours. I do not know what the method we will come to know. I don't know whether I will go through all the 10 plus commissions to go and map it. I don't know who does it, but that will be a request to the staff, because it's all combined, and maybe it's a city staff in general, not necessarily just to Kevin, because you're given a lot of homework and we want to give you something. No. So I want to make sure that somebody aligns and say, oh, looks like 4 commissions are trying to do the same, and it'll be good. Somebody can do that work in the city and tell us, hey, you 4 commissions should sync up on this one, because you all 4 have the same line item. That will help us. Rather than we are trying to come up with our own idea, but maybe sitting there inside which we may not be aware of it. So that's a request I'll put it for the staff.
Well, you can kind of see how this work program, you've got several departments listed under certain items. It could be the same kind of thing, like a couple commissions might be under the same item, 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Might be
And
nice to have 2
thinking
separate
that
ones, yeah.
I'm doing it for mine, and they may not be able to think about we are doing the same. So it'll be an awesome opportunity, a forcing function for us to come together too.
Awesome.
Yep, that's all.
Sounds good. We can go ahead and move on to number 7. Receive monthly update reports from director and commissioners.
Okay. I just want to remind the commission that bios and photos are still being requested. I know some of you have already completed that assignment.
I can tell she
What
already
is
did
that?
hers.
She's sitting there very smugly.
I didn't see it. What is that?
There's a request for a bio of yourself and a photo. And
Maybe
I
I missed that
believe
email then.
So I can recap on this a little bit. Basically, the city's looking to add just a little bit more information on the commissioner's webpage. And they were using a different city's webpage as an example,
I see.
just to have like a headshot and there's a small bio about yourself, so in case
Sure.
to tell yourself about the public.
I'll go to the portrait
public.
studio
Yeah.
tomorrow and I'll get that one.
Yes. So
I
whenever you guys
missed
can
the
send that to
email
me,
when I
that'd
was
be
in
great.
China.
Oh, maybe I
Missed
missed that
that.
email too, so I will get that.
Yeah, I can resend that to you if you'd like, so you
That'd
have
be great.
specifics. Yeah.
If I-
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder, effective yesterday, the department's name change reverted back to Parks and Recreation. So we are now Cupertino Parks and Recreation once again. And in the coming weeks and months, we will begin to roll that out. Obviously, we have a long list of places where that name change needs to be corrected, but you will begin to see that. So I just wanted to remind you of that. And just a reminder, this weekend is the opening of Blackberry Farm, our first weekend for the season. So you are invited, along with our public, to come on out to Blackberry Farm, take part in some picnicking, swimming. I'm not sure how our weather will be this weekend, but you are welcome to all come out. Yeah. And that's all I have.
Is there a specific time for Blackberry Farm stuff that would be like ideal for commissioners to attend?
The whole day. I believe we're
Are they
open.
having some food trucks they did last year?
They
for
did
that?
last year, and I don't have confirmation on that. I apologize. I know that they're open, I believe it's from 10 to 6 on both days, but I'm not sure about the food trucks. I can find out and send you an email,
You were
though.
saying something just before. No? Okay, cool.
No, I think it's just a
time?
general opening day. So anytime, you're welcome to come out and take part and go for a lovely stroll along the corridor.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Awesome. Commissioners, anything to report out?
Okay, yeah, I,
Go ahead.
okay, I do have, I attend, I'm part of the Parent Advisory Committee and some other committees with the CUSD. So I did attend one meeting, one of the meetings last month. And there was a specific discussion, and this is related to parent engagement and especially teen engagement. They're also talking about it. And in the context of especially a transition from middle to high school, and the CUSD received inputs from either the students or parents or in teachers, and there's a lot of challenges in the transition process, and they are trying to use teens to help out, and they were doing a lot of things, and they were looking for what other organization where they can collaborate, and which comes to your point. And so I called out that definitely we do have some intention within our side too from the commission, and we do have a teen commission, we have a teen things, and there are a lot many things. And Leslie, I think she's a program director, I believe. So I spoke to her, and definitely she said she would love to work with us. So there is an awesome opportunity because there is a dire need from the parent and the teens that there is an engagement and work needs to, and that's a one. And which is also actively, there's a goal, they have a set of goals, which I'll try to get them and send it to Kevin, which can be shared. And it says actively engage parents and community members in supporting the implementation of Common Core Standards instruction as a vehicle for the student achievement with the teens' help. So this is, again, going back onto the same topic, but there are two things. One is the transition, middle to high school. The other one is just to bring in parent engagement into it, into community engagement in this. And they cannot fight it alone, so they need help. So that's what discussed. So that's pretty much my update.
Excellent.
I'd like to add, Leslie has already contacted me.
Excellent.
So she's already in touch with our teen coordinator.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it's
Great.
good. Thank you.
Do you have anything?
Yes.
Want to introduce yourself?
I don't know what you meant.
So do you want to reintroduce yourself to
Oh,
everyone?
I can reintroduce myself. I'm Carol Stanek. I am a new old commissioner, an old new commissioner. So happy to be back. I actually was with Parks and Rec staff, interviewed the candidates for the neighborhood events manager position. So saw some great candidates. And can you tell us who you're bringing into the position? Is that a pre-announcement, or is that spilling beans?
I'm not sure that's quite public
Okay.
information yet. The person's not on payroll, so I think I
Okay.
probably should hold off.
Okay. So
But soon we'll know.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
We had some very good candidates, so I'm sure we'll get that going very quickly. So that was good. I attended the Big Bunny Fun Run and am here to report that my husband came in first in his group.
Oh my, that's
After
awesome.
everything, that's so awesome.
Yeah, it helps to sometimes have a birthday and move into another category.
Were you running along with him as well?
I
or
was
being
not
a-
running along with him. I had the dog. I was holding on to the dog.
Cheering for the
So,
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, I did want to comment. I have been seeing the activity is picked up at McClellan Ranch West on the overflow parking, and now that the rains have stopped, so there's a lot of activity going in getting that parking a lot. And I mean, they're putting structures in. It looks very interesting. That'll be cool. And just walking by the community gardens over at McClellan, where they've been completely cleaned out, it looks so much better. I mean, I'm sorry that there's a delay in getting that back on board, but it really needed to happen. There are still some piles of junk over there that I'm sure they're just trying to get that to the dump, but it looks a lot better.
Excellent. Anything else?
Okay, I have something to update. So from last week, the expansion of library became a hot topic in our community, and of course it's related to library commission. But there's one topic I think remind me some item in last meeting. They're talking about the shuttle service. I remember in last meeting, the city staff mentioned in our city we don't offer any fixed route shuttle service. But in their discussion, a lot of community members, they mentioned, they ask if it's possible our city can provide some shuttle service to our library, because before we reconstruct the new parking structure, there's not enough parking space. That's this topic was, yeah, many people know about it. So they just wonder, is it possible to have that? And they also mentioned, so after the school, at the school dismissal time, so there may be a lot of students want to go to the library, so maybe we can work with our school district to see if it's possible, maybe a shuttle wait at the Lawson Middle School, and kids can go there to the library. But the good thing is, in next meeting, the CUSD people will come here. Maybe we can discuss that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Wonderful. That's actually a perfect segue into my update, which is I went to the city council meeting a couple weeks ago where they talked about bringing the via the rideshare. The cool part about it is that it is really modular, so we can still have this
I see.
choose your own, but it can be mixed with a fixed route as well, and they've done that, which will be really interesting. And I think your idea of working with the schools is a really good idea, that we have maybe like one guaranteed that goes from major schools to our city library at the end of every day. And I think that's something that's definitely feasible within the system, which is awesome. It's very flexible. The city council was really focused on how to make it profitable, or how to make it a break even, which is not fiscally possible, just how it's run. It is a community service. So I think that, as the program, the pilot for the program launches, I think we need to, really help make sure that we're engaging community members and encouraging them to use it, because there's
Usage,
there needs to the demand needs to really be proven here, and I think that onus is kind of on us, especially given our commission. The second piece is that City Council did okay the Parks and Rec City Master Plan for CEQA. However, there was still confusion between actual strategic implementation of the options that are in the program and them approving this as as saying that they approve all of these projects. That's not what it is. So just ensuring that when we're talking to community members, that we're very clear with no, even though it's gone to CEQA, it doesn't mean we've okayed, building like 12 new physical structures in Cupertino. It's just to understand what the impact of those are, and we can't make those decisions without understanding what the impact of having those things would be. So that's just as a good reminder for us that we need to be really clear on how we communicate it anytime somebody asks us about it. Awesome. I think that's it. Kevin, you got anything for us? Excellent.
I have something, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So I did attend the Regnart Creek Trail. I don't know if it was a workshop or what it was, a presentation. No, I didn't do. I've done that in the past. But then they had a gathering here in the community hall. It was last week. They were showing the different options. So I just wanted to put on the record and reiterate that last year's Parks and Rec Commission looked at the presentation, the feasibility study, and we as a commission recommended that council adopt the plan as presented, which was recommended to be completely off-road. And it went to council, it was approved, and now this year's council is kind of looking at it again, having more outreach, which I think is really good, looking at some, different options. But I just wanted to reiterate that this commission last year said it should be completely off-road. And some of the reasons were because in the master plan, the outreach to the community, the themes that rose to the top were connectivity, access to nature, trails, and more park space on the east side. And the Regnart Creek Trail sort of fulfills a lot of those things that came out of the community outreach for the parks master plan. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Talking about this, I want to clarify one thing. I heard someone talking about if when the city grant this project, it can substitute East Side Park, but I cannot agree with that idea. I think it's a great project, but I hope it can be separate with the East Side Park.
I don't think that's the issue. I think it's just saying open space, more open space, more green space. It wouldn't substitute for parkland, but it would also, it would contribute to more open space and green space on the east side.
Yeah, I just heard someone say, they said put it on higher priorities. So.
Excellent. All right, sounds good. Well, with that, we can adjourn at 9:43.
to a cage in the local shelter, to heaven, your lap.
It's back. The 2019 Cupertino Volunteer Fair is back again for another year. The Volunteer Fair is a celebration and showcases